Let's go and take a look at the schedule for the 4 days. Today we're going to kick it off with the initial matches for each of the groups. So every player will play once today. Then tomorrow for day 2, we'll have the winners and elimination matches. Then the rubber hits the road for day 3, where we'll go through the decider matches for the groups as well as the quarterfinals. And of course, on day 4, Championship Sunday, for more reasons than one. We have the semifinals and finals, plus those potential tiebreakers. But now let's head into the headlines for this weekend of competition. And Kibler, I'm coming at you for this first one. Back for more. 7 out of the 16 competitors are making their second championship appearance this year.
Yeah, this is a pretty remarkable stat. Almost half the field here has already completed in a championship, and as was mentioned, a number of them are already qualified for the World Championship. So this is an interesting position where we have a lot of players who have proved themselves to be these top consistent performers.
Yeah.
But as well, you know, like Admirable said, a few more spots for Worlds potentially on the line here.
That's right, and that second headline there, Dan, it's the last chance for China. They only have one representative at the World Championship currently, and that's Xiao Ti, who got there through the regional points leader position for China. So last chance to get more than one into the World Championship.
Quality over quantity, TJ. Xiao Ti is a phenomenal player. In fact, when we were interviewing some of the players that were here this weekend, they were saying, you know, I think Xiao Ti is one of the top players in the world, if not the best player in the world, along with Hunter, Ace, and Saiyan, and some of these other players in the conversation. We were in the same position last year as well. China did not really have a player that was qualified through other than Omega Zero, and the person that was able to get that top 4 spot in the final summer season was Jason Zhou, who made a second back-to-back appearance in the semifinals. So I still believe in the quality of the Chinese players at the very top. They just have to continue to prove themselves, and most importantly, they have to get used to traveling. I think a lot of Chinese players, it's like their first time traveling, except for a couple players who've been back, Lion King and Tai Miao, making a second championship appearance this year. I got faith that both these guys can get over the hump.
Yeah, and like you said, those 2 players that are making it back, we'll see if they can succeed this weekend. But I'd like to change this conversation to talk about the meta, because I think that's what people are here to see, the decks. And we could take a look at the most popular decks that players brought to the Winter Championship. Admirable, mid-range Hunter, all the way at the top.
Yeah, I think that Hunter being at the top is not really a surprising metric. I think when it comes to tournament play, or even ladder play for that matter, it's just such a strong deck overall that has game against pretty much everything in the field. The thing that we've noticed recently is that the aggressive decks have begun waning, and as a result, you've seen Priest, in the Dragon Priest form anyway, kind of take a step back as well. And I think that's why for this tournament we saw the Cloning Gallery Priest really step forward with a big force in this one. And then even Warlock to me always stands out. I'm not a big fan of this deck right now. I don't think it sits in a good spot, but where the 4th deck is concerned, that's really been one of the big talks of the metagame. What's your 4th deck? It's typically going to be your weakest one. Even Warlock just seems like a fairly reasonable pick for most players.
Yeah, one thing that really stands out to me is outside of the top 2 decks, Midrange Hunter and Cloning Gallery Priest, this is not exactly representative of what we see on the current ladder matchmaking. You see a lot of the odd paladins still out there. You see a lot of those aggressive decks really come out here. What's really happened in the tournament meta is that it's completely shifted and diverged away from what you normally see when you're queuing up a game of Heartstone on ranked play. So I think that's very fascinating because, you know, people are talking about Genin-Baku right now. The announcement has dropped. We are live. This is not recorded. We just saw the announcement at the same time you guys did that Genin-Baku will be rotated in the 2019 Hall of Fame, but yet, despite that, in this tournament, not that many people are bringing odd and even decks.
Yeah, and we can transition this into class representation overall, not archetypes. And Kibler, Hunter at the top, no surprise. Shaman at the bottom, also no surprise.
Yeah, Thrall's been kind of having a rough time lately. Rexar, though, doing great. But I do think one interesting thing about the sort of tournament metagame that Dan was touching on compared to the ladder metagame, because players can ban that mid-range Hunter deck, we saw one of the top representing classes is Quest Rogue. Yeah, Quest Rogue is really kind of a surprising thing if you're coming from the ladder metagame to this, but when you can ban that Hunter and you expect a lot of more slow controlling decks, that Quest Rogue deck, especially given the nerfs to Odd Rogue, the sort of previous potential Rogue deck a lot of people played, is a really appealing choice.
Yes, I mean, I think Rogue is actually one of the most interesting classes at this tournament. We have so many archetypes. We have the Quest Rogue that you saw was the most represented. Odd Rogue making a little bit of appearance. Tempo Rogue making a little bit of a comeback, or Miracle Rogue if you want to kind of define it as such. So I'm really, and you know, obviously Viper's Malagos Rogue, the coolest one of them all. And so I want to see if this diversity of the Rogue class can really put it on its map, because everyone's talking about Hunter. everyone's talking about Priest as the second fiddle, but Rogue is right in there, I think, as a top-tier class.
Yeah, it's going to be because not many bands probably drawn towards Rogue today. We're going to be seeing it a lot over the course of the weekend, so I'm definitely excited. But let's go and take a look at the groups now to see which of these players will be competing. And Auerbol, I'm going to come to you to give us who to look for in Group A. What are the big stories coming out with Viper, Noblord, HCT, and Tansoku?
Well, Viper and Tansoku have been to championships this year. They're coming back for another one. HCT is a player I'm really looking forward to. In the interview, seemed very calm and composed and touched a lot on mindset and just being focused in game. And frankly, a lot of players did, but it seemed like he had an emphasis on that topic when it came to it. And Noblord, coming from the TESPA Collegiate Series, where he pretty much got his start. He won a national title there and was very successful in his time, and was also competing in a last call tournament a couple years back when he was top 8 in points in the region. And so this whole entire group is stacked, and the one I'm looking forward to is the Noblord versus Viper match, because I think their styles and their deck list really contrast.
Yeah, and that one's coming up first, so something to look forward to. Also, a reminder to the viewers at home, Choose Your Champion is still live currently. So as we give this breakdown of the players throughout all these groups, make sure you're getting on and voting for your champion at playheartstone.com. You can get some packs for how well they do. So
you need to hurry though.
Yeah, you need to hurry though.
Does it close when game 1 starts? Because then you have like a little bit of an edge. You get to see how the game's playing out.
I don't know. Maybe they'll be a little late, but I would get on it now.
Noblord's got a good mulligan. Big Noblord, big Noblord.
But Group B, Dan, Bloodyface, Tyler, Faeli, and Jing.
Yeah, I think the player to watch for this group is Faeli. I think Bloodyface and Tyler already have their World Championship spots. Bloodyface, of course, getting second in the fall season. Tyler being the regional points leader for Asia Pacific. So the pressure's off them, and that might help them perform better. But in terms of the questions that we have, Faeli is a player that's been on the verge of breakout for a couple of years now. And when people look at Europe, they look at a lot of the other superstars that have dominated for years, or the newest rookie to come onto the scene of Hunter Race. So I think Faeli is a player that's gone under the radar, but if you look at him, his competitive pedigree in every card game that he touches is being in the top 0.001%. So I think this guy is extremely talented, he's very tall, and he's very motivated to do it this weekend.
All right, we'll transition to Group C here. Kibler, Definition, Zaimeow, Ike, and ThunderUp.
There are a few big stories here. Zaimeow was the player from China who was generally considered to have been the strongest from the last championship where he appeared, and he may be that sort of best hope of China, the Chinese region getting an additional player through to the Worlds. Ike is a major fan favorite. He's a favorite of mine, a lot of us here as among the casters. But Definition too, he is a player who represents Korea, and he's the last hope for Korea to get a player through to the World Championship, and they have never failed to have a representative there. So a lot of pressure on him.
Yeah, another bonus story, if Tyler makes it to the top 4, that World Championship spot takes precedence over his points leader standings, which means Rivius from Korea would get that spot. So Definition's fighting through Group C.
Backdoor out.
But they do have that out with Tyler, who's playing for Vietnam as well as Korea.
There you go.
Yeah.
So all the more reason to cheer for Tyler if you're a fan of Korean players or Rivius.
Yeah, but Group D here, it's Lion King making his second championship appearance. Bunny Hopper, Roger, and Bobby X. And I think one of the biggest players to watch here has to be Bunny Hopper, coming off of a seasonal championship win, but also now that he's finished with his PhD, he can devote even more time to Hearthstone, which makes him even more scary as a player, which is crazy to think about.
You know, it's funny you mentioned that in the interview. Bloodyface was talking about Bunny Hopper, completing his PhD during that time, and he said that he already thinks that Bunny Hopper is potentially the best player in the world. And to think how scary of a player he would have been had he been able to devote more time to playing the game is like an enormous statement from a player of Bloodyface's quality.
Yeah, and of course we have to mention the support systems behind the players competing this weekend, the teams that some of these players representing. Ike, you talked about him being a fan favorite, but he's also a Kibler favorite.
It's true.
Because they share a team. Same with Tyler for complexity. But then we have Zaimeow, HCT, Lion King, and Jing all represented by teams.
Rogue and Topsy Priest, which, as he said in that little interview piece, he really thinks will suffer having enough time to get online against Viper's very aggressive lineup.
Yeah, there's two decks that I'm very worried about. It's Topsy-Turvy, OTK Priest, and it's the Quest Rogue. Both of them are very vulnerable to aggressive strategies, which Viper has in spades. The one question mark, of course, is Malagos Rogue. That is a combo deck that tries to beat other control decks. or other OTK decks, because it just gets it much quicker than other opponents. Right. And so this reminds me very similar of the strategy we saw from China in the previous season, where they brought 3 aggressive decks and a Malagos Druid. Right. And because the reason why is they're trying to just go over the top of these slower decks and really punish them. And so we'll see if that ends up lining up. The statistics strongly favor Viper, almost to a 2-to-1 ratio. The only question is there enough sample size for us to really know? Because I'm looking at the data. There's like 20 games logged in the past like month of Murloc Paladin.
Right.
So how do you actually know? It even says that it's a 50-50 matchup against Quest Rogue, which I do not believe.
Yeah, well, one of the really interesting things, we had a chance to sit down and talk to these players. Viper said that he specifically brought Murloc Paladin as opposed to the more common even Paladin or odd Paladin as far as an aggressive deck. And he specifically wanted his deck to be as strong as possible against Fan of Knives and Spirit Lash.
Right.
He was expecting there to be Cloning Gallery Priests and Quest Rogues that had those cards that if you're trying to build a board of 1/1s, you know, you're going to end up getting punished. Whereas if you're playing Murloc Paladin, you play a Tidecaller, you Rock Pool Hunter it, and your opponent's just sits there with their Spirit Lash and they're like, this gains me some life, I guess.
Right. I mean, I think that just shows you that Viper went one level deeper. I mean, there's only one single odd Paladin in this entire tournament, and it's from Ike. Yep. And the other person that considered it was Viper, and he said, you know what, I want to bring out Paladin, but just don't want to get destroyed by those big board-sweeping spells. Now, what does surprise me is the ban choices. Both Hunters being banned, which is not that surprising if you, you know, are looking at it just from a glance, because, you know, Hunter's really strong. But there's also some other decks that are worth thinking about.
Yeah. We even heard Noblord say he didn't think that Viper would ban his Hunter in that little interview piece. And in particular, I think he may have expected his Odd Warrior to get banned, because Odd Warrior is obviously a very powerful deck against these more aggressive decks from Viper. So I'm a bit curious about that particular decision from the German player.
All right, well, we'll start off this best of 5 in what could possibly be the most one-sided matchup you'll see all weekend. It is Secret Odd Mage going first, having a play with Secret Keeper and Kirin Tormage. If that lands any Secret, Viper might just blow this one out of the water. It is extremely difficult for a Quest Rogue to deal with this kind of pressure early on.
Yeah, the Odd Mage, the Odd Secret Mage, is just so powerful at pressuring the opponent's life total, and does have, you know, burst damage in the form of, well, Leroy Jenkins, as we see Viper pick up. Just the hero power dealing 2 damage allows you to back up your early aggression. So even once your opponent does potentially stabilize, if they don't have the quest completed with Vicious Scalehide, they really have just no way to compete in the game. And you know, Viper here, he has a strong draw, and Noblord's draw is fine, I guess, but there's, you know, still, like, he doesn't have Sonya, or one of the things that will allow him to really quickly complete his quest.
Yep, and speaking of the quest, turn 1 is already a point of consideration for Noblord, and I love this hesitation. A lot of people think, okay, the way I have to win is to get this quest online, get the mana spent, but Noblord does have an opportunity to take out this Secret Keeper over the course of 2 turns.
Yeah, here he can coin Dagger, and you know, or looks like he's going to go ahead and just stone his board. Same basic principle though, which is that he wants to ensure that this gets killed before Viper can get a secret online to buff it. That's right. So the quest can wait. You know, he'll be able to spend that 1 mana later point. He's not planning on completing the quest off of the board this game.
Yeah, the name of the game for Noblord is survival. A lot of times people might look at the Stone Trust board and think of it as a finishing card, but sometimes, you know, if you just survive long enough, you'll win the board convincing with 4/4s and win in 2 turns after that.
Yep.
So Noblord recognizes the long-term plan here. And even though, you know, Kirin Tormage just comes down, it's still a threatening minion as a 4/3, and Noblord would have to use his Southsea deckhand if he wants to destroy it.
Ooh, he actually has a second deckhand too, and that's pretty nice for his quest. Obviously, he's not going to play them both right here, but it, you know, it does give him, you know, some incentive to play the quest first, then potentially play the deckhand.
Yeah.
To take down the Kirin Tormage here. But there are just a lot of permutations of how he might want to spend his mana this turn.
Yeah, and what's interesting too is that because there's no secret in hand, maybe Noblord feels a lot more comfortable setting up a Vanish play. He did have Preparation and Vanish in his opening hand, and, you know, I think that is fairly crucial, because as good as Odd Secret Mage is with some of its damage spells like Cinderstorm and using its hero power, it is very minion dependent as well. So if Noblord can stall just long enough, he does have a really good play with being able to get 4 Southsea deckhands equivalent. if he plays both and vanishes them.
Yeah, it's true. And this turn, we see Noblord definitely taking his time, wants to figure out what not only he wants to do this turn, but all of his sort of future turns that he can plan out here.
Right.
As you mentioned, he does need to try to get a quick quest, very likely completed, in order to have a great chance here. And if he does sacrifice that deckhand here, which would prevent damage over turns, yes, he does sacrifice. All right, yeah, he's just gonna go ahead and hold on to them. So I think he agrees with you that he wants to play deckhand into Vanish, perhaps next turn.
Yeah, I think this is the winning line, because then Noblord is only one bounce away from finishing the quest, and then he will be empty-handed essentially.
Right.
But the important thing is he now has a chance, which is more than you can ask for if your win percentage is about 10 to 15% based off the statistics.
We have many secrets.
Ends up working out okay for Viper. Just needed to get 1 damage onto that Wax Elemental. And
second Vanish is, pretty good. Yeah, and we see Noblord is going to go ahead and fire off the coin prep Vanish in the correct order.
Yes,
not prep coin Vanish.
A mistake that many people have made. I mean,
I've been there.
We've all been there. At least you have an excuse that you're streaming. I don't have much of an excuse other than that I just did not pay attention.
So now, this is kind of an awkward spot for Viper. He has his Subject 9, which would give him how many secrets does he actually have? Yeah, he can actually play the Subject 9 into Kirin Tor double secret next turn. I think he has 4 secrets.
Yes, he has a counter spell as well, which
does fill his hand. He's going to burn a card, but that's not a big deal. But getting the counter spell is important because it does mean that he can potentially strand something. Though Noblord picking up that second preparation is in a little bit of a better situation at potentially trying to protect his quest.
Well, what's really exactly. That's
there aren't that many. There aren't that many
right.
spells in this deck. It's basically just the preparations, the shadow steps, and the vanishes. So he'd need to have either preparation or shadow step effectively to counter the counter spell in order to get through, force through the spell he really wants to resolve.
Oh man, it really is decision point time because Noblord can. I mean, in Noblord's head, that is actually a really good draw because the South Sea deckhands and the preparation Vanish #2 allows him to not only finish the quest, but also destroys the Subject 9.
Right. But the problem being that if he does play deckhand, prep Vanish, then he has just the quest against a face-up counterspell because of the Subject 9. So that's ends up being really problematic for Noblord. He knows all the secrets that are in Viper's deck. So now also, now there's an explosive room. So it means that one of these deckhands is getting exploded if it comes down.
Right. And this is really tricky for Viper. Tricky from Viper if he doesn't play the counterspell because Noblord has to play with respect to it now.
Right.
And that fear is going to be creeping in the back of his mind. However, we are very quickly reaching that breaking point where Noblord might not have a chance anymore or does not have an opportunity to play around it.
Right.
There's 12 damage showing with the ability to just hero power in 2 turns.
Yep.
Sees the counter spell, and that was exactly what he was afraid of. But this Vanish #2 is going to buy him a little bit extra time.
Yeah, but the problem for Noblord here is he's still, because he had to, he hasn't actually, I don't think that's close to on. I don't think Viper's hero powered once.
Yeah, I don't think so. Actually, you're
Viper spent all of his mana on minions this game so far. So yeah, Jan'alai doesn't even do anything. But here, he's going to go ahead and get 2 more. Not just the 1. Oh, he's just moving them in between.
Yeah, Mirrority is not.
Okay, he's getting the ping off. Okay, yeah. Well, specifically, I was trying to figure out was he going to play the second Kirin Tor for the free Mirror Entity, but he wants to start pinging because of the Jan'alai he's drawn.
Right, and it's also set to lethal too with Leroy plus the hero power, and that would be 14. So Noblord picking up that Elven Minstrel. It's solid, but what's scary is that this explosive rune is going to deal 4 damage. It deals the damage equivalent to what the Divine Shield minion receives, and then the excess is delivered. So, Divine Shield, even though it takes 0, still has to pay the price for the explosive runes.
It does. And now Noblord, he is in a pretty terrible spot here. I mean, he is dead to Leroy on the board. He doesn't know that there's necessarily that Leroy.
Right.
He could use his deckhands to clear off the Firefly, the Flame almost, but even just ping Leroy still kills him. So there's really no way out of this for Noblord, and he's just going to try to figure out, okay, I'm just going to try and dig. Finds his Iliacs, which could be good later, but there's no later.
Yeah,
That's game.
And now you see why it's a difficult matchup, because Noblord did deal with a lot of the early game threats, even had an opportunity to finish the quest, but there's just too many problematic things from the Secret Mage, both aggressively and in disruption through that counterspell.
Yeah, that was the Subject 9 coming down was really what was backbreaking that game. Obviously, the early aggression is powerful and puts Noblord in the clock. That's fundamentally why the matchup is tough. But knowing that there was the counterspell there really meant that he couldn't play the sort of line that he was going for when he went with that early vanish.
Yeah, that's right. So, again, this is one of the most one-sided matchups that you'll see in terms of the actual heads-to-head. We have Odd Mage's best matchup is 85 to 90% against Quest Rogue, and I think that goes to show you why. And even if Quest Rogue didn't receive one of its nerfs, I still think it would be a very difficult time.
Certainly. Regardless
if it was a 4-4 or 5-5.
Yeah, so much of what makes Quest Rogue powerful is its inevitability in long games, that you get to start making these 4-4s or 5-5s or whatever they are, and you don't get to play a long game because they are just playing their minions, hitting you in the face.
Yeah, well, the round 1 gambit here from Viper to target Noblord's tendency to bring slower decks is paying off. But we'll find out what happens when we come back to the HCT Winter Championships. Stay tuned for game number 2. It's pretty good. However, again, there's not much data on things like how Murloc, Paladin, and Malygos Rogue look against it, just because there's not many people playing those decks on ladder.
Yeah, it is one of the hallmarks of Viper's lineup is it does include a number of pretty unusual decks.
Right.
And that is a place that you can get edge against opponents who, they may have played 1,000 games against a typical version of a particular metagame deck. However, when you're playing against these lists that don't really show up very commonly on ladder, like this one that Viper's playing right here, Malygos Rogue. This is not a deck that you run into very frequently, and this is a deck that can kill you from 30 quite readily, which is something that makes it, potentially pretty powerful in this matchup against Quest Rogue. This is not something that I've ever played. These two decks are not ones that I decide, I'm gonna go jam some games of Malygos Rogue on ladder. Not my style exactly, but
you're more of a test rogue kind of guy.
Exactly. You know me well, Frodan.
I've watched your stream a handful of times and talked to you once. Yeah, the Quest Rogue versus Malygos Rogue has actually a pretty even split down the middle, and I think it largely has to do with their power spikes and how good they are at finding specific cards. So for Viper, the key card in his deck, in my opinion, is the Elven Minstrel, to make sure that he has the cards in hand. For people who are not familiar with Malygos Rogue's newest take, is that you utilize a card called Kobold Illusionist that has a death rattle of summoning a 1/1 copy of a minion in your hand. And obviously you're holding Malygos, so if you get out a 4-mana Kobold Illusionist, able to trigger its Death Rattle effect through Necreon Blade, which was mulliganed, or through Necreon Vial, you can get 1, 2, maybe even 3 copies of Malygos, and a single spell will basically kill them. And it's extremely powerful and explosive, but it's also very volatile, because you think Miracle Rogue of the past was very dependent on 1 or 2 cards, so like Auctioneer. This deck is extremely dependent on things like Elven Minstrel and making sure you have the right hand.
And so much of it is about just digging through your deck to find them. We see Roll the Bones as one of the key cards in his deck. It's not because he has a bunch of Death Rattles. His Death Rattle is that one you see on the screen, Code Illusion. Only one. You're only looking to pay your 2 mana in order to draw another card. And that's why this deck has 2 copies of Shiv, 2 copies of Fan of Knives. It's just looking to draw through its deck as quickly as possible to assemble Kobold Illusionist, Malygos, Necreon Blade, boom.
Yes, and I do think that Noblord does have legitimate pressure opportunities if he's able to develop that quest pretty early on.
We see this here. He's just playing the Lab Recruiter here for pressure. He just wants a 3/2 for 2. He's not trying to use it for any kind of fancy later on, combo with resetting thing. No, he's just looking to put minions to the board and hit Viper. It's not a position that Quest Rogue typically is in, but this is a matchup where Quest Rogue is fundamentally the aggressor.
Roll again.
And we see, re-roll. Didn't like what I got the first time.
Would you backstab this Elven Minstrel? Do you think that 3 life is really important to conserve at this point? Because Viper was okay with the first one, but I don't think he necessarily wants to play too aggressively with his life total, but it's still very early on.
Yeah, it's interesting because he potentially may want to hold on to backstab in order to give him an easy combo piece for Elven Minstrel.
That's true.
Because he doesn't want to sacrifice his preparations, which can be valuable later. Obviously, he doesn't want to use burn spells like Sinister Strike, but he does have double prep. And that Phantom Knight does not have a Minstrel, so he does decide to just fire that off and get that off the board.
Yeah, what's unfortunate, though, is that Viper, if he does not deal with it now, is going to take an additional 3 damage. So it's actually saving him 6 life, I think, from his perspective, unless he was willing to backstab the following turn. If he's willing to backstab the following turn, then why'd you even take that 3 damage in the first place?
Yeah, it's just a little bit of a, do I want a little bit more information, or do I want to take, like you said, 6 damage? Because he could Phantom Knife stab it next turn. It's an opportunity.
Right. I don't like being in the low 20s.
No.
If I could stay pretty close to full. And Noblord's taking the slow route for the quest, balancing his Novice Engineer. And this could be a nod to how slow Viper start has gotten, although it might get a lot quicker. That Elven Minstrel is a big-time draw, because if Viper picks up exactly that Cobalt Illusionist and Malygos, because he also could pick up the second Elven Minstrel, for example, the game might actually be over at that point.
Very close.
Because he already has 2 preparations.
Well, specifically he has Necrim Vial, which is so powerful. Necrim Vial gives you 2 additional death rattles, which means that you get 3 copies of the Illusionist. Because often you end up wanting to Necrim Vial, then kill it with, say, a backstab or an Eviscerate, and then you just add up additional damage to your opponent's face.
Well, I mean, so he can Eviscerate and then Elven Minstrel.
Yep.
He has 2 preparations, so for 6 mana, he'll have Cobalt Illusionist, Malygos.
There it is.
And the Necrim Vial with 2 spells. So this game's actually already over.
So he doesn't have the Necrim Blade. So he only is able to, he can play the Illusionist, prep Necrim Violet. He only has 1 mana left over, which is Sinister Strike, Eviscerate, which is +10 to each of those. Yeah, no, that's actually.
Yeah, it's 20 plus 7.
It's 14 plus 11, right? It's 27.
Yeah, 27.
So it's actually not quite lethal.
Oh, it's not quite lethal. He's at 29.
Yeah. So, but again, that's just how close this game is to just being over, based on that single draw. There's a second Minstrel that actually gets nothing right now, because this deck is specifically built to always get its combo if you draw a Minstrel, because 1 Minstrel either draws you the entire combo or your other Minstrel. It's why one of the reasons that it doesn't play stuff like the Shiny Finder, which is in some versions of Malygos Rogue in order to find the Necrim Blade to be able to set up that additional damage from the combo. However, it does mean that you have a chance of missing with your Elven Minstrel, which can give the deck a higher fail rate.
Right. And it's one of those things where Viper plays a little bit liberally with his first Eviscerate, right? He could have saved that, but he also wants to hold on to things like the evasion, because he doesn't know if Noblord can stay out of range repeatedly and then start threatening him on the back end.
And the scary thing, the scariest thing for Viper is actually getting to the stage where Noblord can play Valera the Hollow, because it gives him multiple additional ways out of getting comboed. One is just the stealth. If the stealth just buys enough time for Noblord to just attack and get meaningful damage in.
Right. That is why one of the most...
Wow, he's eviscerating? Wait, what? What just happened?
Preventing the vanish. Punish.
Okay, sure. Wait.
No, he's at 7 cards. Oh, he was at 8 cards, right? And then
would have been 8 cards. Okay, yeah. So that was the goal there. Was he's using his eviscerate to not burn a card with vanish? But
couldn't you eviscerate the face?
It does seem like that's a better choice.
Oh, sorry. Less Sonya trades. Okay.
Okay. That's what it is. That's what it is.
That's actually fairly clever.
Yeah, I was just like trying to figure out what is going on here.
Yeah, no, because I was like, because the Vanish came in the hand, I'm like, oh, it's the Vanish, but then he also had Sonya in the hand, and when, the more health that's on the board, the more Noblord can trade.
That is quite clever.
That is very, very smart, and and people might look at the Eviscerate and be like, well, you're just giving up your chance to win. The moment Viper draws a Razor Petal Volley, like that, this game is also like over. So I really like how Viper is not only able to recognize the situation, but also deny Noblord some of his best plays. Very intelligent.
Yeah, it's definitely a very unorthodox play from Viper there, but does respect the best possible card that Noblord could have to advance his quest, which is, of course, that Sonya. And there's a Sinister Strike, so...
Yeah, still kind of same boat, 26 damage. But the guys, again, goes to show you that Viper is very close. And the moment he picks up any other burst that can go with it, which looks like it's pretty much just Shiv and the Razor Pit of Volleys, that'll be it. But there's also a lot of ways for him to continue stall. He has a second evasion. He has 2 vanishes himself.
And here, yeah, I expect that given the respect that Viper paid to the Sonya last turn, he will very likely just dagger and stab off the Divine Shield, not play that Elven Minstrel.
Yeah, why does he have to play this Elven Minstrel?
Right, there's no incentive. Last turn he played it because he needed to get, wanted to get cards out of his hand, I suppose. Oh, he's going to play it this turn, though.
I mean, it's not as threatening if it's just 2 health, because your opponent would just be able to get 2 copies of minions, and Noblord's right now focused on the Novice Engineer.
Sure, that's true. That's true, and that doesn't have Charger Rush.
Yeah, I mean, Noblord was thinking about insta-slamming the Sonya Shadow Dancer to get the copies of minions for his quest completion. However, he doesn't exactly have the cleanest minions to do it with either.
Right.
I mean, he has a Novice Engineer where he can trade in, but his Novice Engineer still, I think this is his 3rd.
I suppose there's also the concern that if you don't play the Minstrel this turn, that your opponent is likely to advance more to the quest and then can potentially like heal off of the, say a Vicious Scale Hide later on if you're forced to play it due to having a full hand.
Makes sense. Now we're getting the 4th bounce already preemptively. Oh, that's the 5th, excuse me.
Choose soon.
Pardon me, that's right. He bounced it one time before that as well with the Youthful Brewmaster. So that's going to be a finished quest next turn for Viper. All the more reason, perhaps, of why he has to take defensive measures and also start considering things like his evasion in future turns and the timing of exactly what you were talking about.
There's Vanish. So, Viper is now, again, not really in a spot where he's found any of that burst.
Right,
and Vanish doesn't really do a ton against Noblord. Obviously, it does bounce these, which are going to be 4/4s, but they don't cost very much to replay. And Noblord has Valera,
right,
which means that Viper is getting further in sort of a problem situation.
Yeah, the Valera the Hollow is the really scary thing for Viper now. If he can hold on to it, and I think that might be the big deciding factor of often why this matchup might look close percentage-wise, because if you can shut down your opponent's plays with Valera because they can't target it. Actually, the only way they can is Sinister Strikes, which would work, but they have to be at 26 or below. Oh, that's actually interesting the way that works out. Viper sees also the 2nd Vanish, by the way, so this is him being more confident that perhaps he doesn't have as much ways to defend himself.
And the quest is already just completed, so there's no downside to playing this Elven Minstrel because Noblord's at full health, so there's no Sonya concern here.
Right.
And there's no Scale Hide concern because, well, he can't heal above 30 anyway.
Right. But, I mean, Noblord also loses that, like, Stone Toe Spore, Sousy Deckhand, Vanish, and then burst for, like, 16 or more. So, we'll see if Noblord, or how Noblord chooses to do this. I think for one thing, with the evasion being played, he might be a little bit scared about the Valera timing. He might say, is this time now to Valera? Because he does have some pretty good stuff in his hand already. So burning a card wouldn't be the end of the world here, because he is at 10.
Yeah, the Valera here does protect him if if Viper is just waiting for one more card to actually end the game. Valera's powerful here. Crystal Core though allows him to does allow him to push some damage.
Sees the evasion. It's a lot of it's the timeout. It's the ice block for the class, and Noblord's gonna take that risk. Says, you know what, you got me, but I need to do this.
Yep. And Viper finds Necrium Blade.
That's pretty big.
It is.
That is very, very
big. He can
big.
actually Vanish Blade hit the face.
Yes, instead of a 27. And that is really, really important.
So I believe then if Noblord draws the other deckhand or a bounce spell, he wins, because Viper's at 13. And he'd be able to play deckhand.
Well, one of the trickier things, too, is even if he didn't have it, Viper also has that Glacial Shard on the board. So you just freeze the face and they can't attack.
Well, you can hero power.
Oh, yeah, you're right.
You can always hero power to replace your Necreon Blade and get the Death Rattle effect.
There you go. Yeah, you have the mana to do that. So in this position, then, what's the best hedge for Viper in this spot? I don't really know if there is one. I think you just got to go for it.
There once was a man from Gildan.
He just wants to get the extra damage on board in case he needs to punch through some minions.
But doesn't playing this against an opponent who has Vicious Scale Hide?
That's okay, because he gets 3 copies of Malygos with the double Necreon Vial. Actually, this is just game then, right? Because the Malygos
was 32.
Yeah.
So he plays Cobalt Illusionist, Prep Vial, Hero Powers or Swings.
Yep, it's 36.
Yeah, I think it's actually just enough damage.
No, it's just absurd
like, oh,
damage.
You're at 30. Wait, is it? Is it? Hold on, because he's not doing it. Wait. Hold on. Each of those is plus 15, right? If he does it that way.
Yeah. Because it's okay. So Necreon Vial plus a Necreon Blade is 3 Malygos, and so that's 15 plus 15 for the spell damage plus the
36.
It's 36.
Isn't it?
I think Viper wasn't 100% sure that you could target it.
He may have just like not been looking for that.
So when Valeria the Hollow is played as a battle cry, you gain stealth, which means you can't target it with abilities like Fireball or Frostbolt or Kill Command. But things that target things automatically can still hit it, just like a Deadly Shot can hit a Stranglethorn Tiger. So as far as my recollection goes, this should still be lethal the previous turn, and I think Viper just made extra sure that was the case. And now was like, oh man, he has it. He has everything.
Yeah, it's just the enemy hero. The enemy hero, doesn't matter if they're stealthed or not, but regardless, Viper has 3 Malygos into Sinister Strike, and he leads 2-0 in this match.
Yeah, that is brutal for Noblord. He needed that victory desperately because Quest Rogue is a problematic deck for him to get through in this series. And with that, Murloc Paladin is all that remains. Viper and his risky lineups is quickly becoming one of my favorite things about competitive Hearthstone, because you saw him bring that controlled Dragon Shaman in the playoffs to absolutely wreck the field in a time where people basically say Shaman is unplayable ever since the Shutterwalker.
Yeah, and it's interesting because, you know, Viper is someone who is very well known for playing sort of anti-control style lineups, playing very controlling or basically control decks or Miracle Rogue is what he's mostly known for. So it took a lot of players off guard bringing this lineup here, and you know, Noblord certainly one of them who planned his lineup around trying to beat what he expected Viper to play, and well, nothing close to what he actually brought.
And remember that Viper also has qualified for the World Championship based off his performance in the winter season, and so he doesn't necessarily have a lot of pressure on him. He says, yeah, I want to play obviously for the money and the glory, but you know, I already got my spot in the World Championship, so he's taking it easy, but maybe that's helping him because he looks like he's, well, outside of that one missed turn, he's brought a really cool lineup and he's playing really well.
Well, his attitude actually was not, you know, oh, I'm already qualified, I don't really care. It was, you know, I want to win. I want to win everything, and I'm not bringing this as some sort of, you know, test, because actually Noblord was hypothesizing that, well, did he bring aggro decks here so we can't just put him on control decks for Worlds? Right. Just trying to expand his range of what we can expect. And no, he's just like, I just think these are the best decks for me to bring to this tournament, so that's what I'm doing, because I always want to win.
All right, well, winning is what Viper is doing. He's up 2-0. Noblord has to reverse sweep Murloc Paladin, which we haven't seen in quite some months. So when we come back to the HCT Winter Championship, we'll find out what's going to happen in this initial match. Viper and Noblord in Group A, where the winner will go on on and play in the winner's match. For today, we are going to do all the initial matches for all the groups. And if you guys missed game number 2, it was Malygos Rogue versus Quest Rogue. Do want to make a small correction to the last couple turns there. One thing that Gilbert and I were tunneling so much was the Cobalt Illusionist to Malygos. We ignored the fact that Elemental can also be pulled as a minion.
Yeah, that is a big part of the minimum minion build, is ensuring that you don't have any minion potentially glutting your hand when you need to go for the combo, because Cobalt Illusionist is a random minion in your hand. Well, if there's 2, that's not necessarily a Malygos. You could end up with a 1/1 Minstrel. That's bad. So
that's right. I mean,
Viper wasn't miscounting anything. We were the idiots, and he did it perfectly.
Well, I mean, you even brought it up. You said, like, that's why we don't even play, like, shiny Cavern Fire.
Right, exactly.
Right?
You want to be ensured that you have the maximum possibility of getting those things through. And, Viper didn't want to take any risks. There's no reason. He knew 100% chance next turn, so I mean, go for it.
He is a rogue expert on many reasons for exactly what you just saw. Now, we'll turn into a matchup that I gotta say I have never seen yet. It is the Murloc Paladin versus the Quest topsy-turvy one-turn kill Stone Dust board.
You mean this isn't representative of all of your ladder games?
No, this is a segment on Who's Me Reign Supreme, which Firebat would be playing the Paladin, and someone like me or you would be playing a Quest Priest.
Well, this specifically is not, this isn't some sort of grindy Quest Priest. This is topsy-turvy Quest Priest, which, if you're not familiar, uses combination of Radiant Elemental to reduce the cost of your spells, the Test Subject plus Vivid Nightmare, and Topsy-Turvy to generate a bunch of buffs for your Stone Tusk Boar. And because you can keep doing this on your Test Subject, keep loading these up, you can actually get more and more of them, so you can continue to make additional copies of Stone Tusk Boar, make them even bigger, and eventually just kill your opponent. But that takes time. And like we've been saying quite a bit in this particular matchup, Viper's lineup is not intended to give Noblord time. In fact, it is intended to do quite the opposite and kill him as fast as possible.
Yeah, I do find this kind of funny that Viper threw away the Nightmare Amalgam and just got a Nightmare Amalgam right back. So we've all been there for sure. The thing is, can Noblord deal with the Gentle Megasaur? Because, the thing about this Topsy-Turvy Priest deck is that it is relatively light on removal. It's a deck that favors insane card draw and combo pieces, and perhaps even a little bit too reliant on Amara, Warden of Hope, in order to get the clear as well. So with Noblord having 2 Mass Hysteria and Psychic Screams, he might be very dependent on drawing those cards even more than his combo pieces.
Yeah, absolutely. And, Viper, again, is just looking to close the game out. And specifically, as we were talking before, he played Murloc Paladin because it doesn't have so many 1-health minions. It is not reliant on building up a board of Silverhand recruits like Odd Paladin, or sometimes Even Paladin. It has 1/2s for 1. It has 3/4s for 3, and it has the Gentle Megasaur to take advantage of those sticking at all. Noblord's deck is going to spend time trying to get to the later stages of the game and wants to hit its Mass Hysterias and Psychic Screams, and Viper's looking to close the door on him before that can happen. Ooh, Coin Blessing of Kings on the Murloc with the Megasaur means that potentially Viper can have a Wind Fury come down as the adapt for the Megasaur here. Just looking to get as much damage in as quickly as possible and keep Noblord from getting his card draw and assemble his combo, or more crucially, find his removal.
Yeah, that's the thing about this Murloc Paladin. Remember, we actually did see Murloc Paladin versus a deck that functions a little bit similarly to how the Quest Priest was, which is Reno Jackson. And a lot of times, the Murloc Paladin would just set up a huge board, even after if you healed to full.
Right.
And it would just hit you for like 35 afterwards. So, Viper is going to have a very tall, intimidating board if Noblord continues to let it expand, but it's not like he has much of a choice.
Right. And I believe that's 4 Death Rattles for Noblord toward his quest.
Right.
Usually you see people hold the Radiant Elementals because they're so important to get to the later stages of the game as part of your combo. However, Noblord wants as much board presence as possible here to try to combat Viper's board, because he doesn't have the time to get to the late stages of the game if he just tries to hold on to those combo pieces for later.
Exactly. He still can get it done. He still has a Radiant Elemental, 2 Shadow Visions, and a Vivid Nightmare, so if things work out pretty well, that could go in his favor. Also, if he's able to stick Amara onto the board, that is a potential way for him to, potential path to victory. But I think that potential is slipping away with each passing turn. This is so much damage.
Seance is actually kind of interesting. He can steal a Righteous Protector, which can absorb a bit of damage.
Okay, I like that.
So Righteous Protector and killing one of these at least absorbs 4 damage, which has to be at least a little bit appealing.
Yeah, it's
Maybe
just that if you can complete the quest, Seance with Amara is just exactly what you're looking for.
Right, that's often how you beat minion-based decks. You're not looking to go nuts with your combo. You're just like, okay, eventually you do, but it's not assembling as fast as possible is not how you win. You win by getting to Amara and just stopping them from being able to kill you, using your removal to clear up their board, and then okay, well I have tons of time now.
Right. Noblord has one more test subject. He can drop. Basically, there's 2 loot hoarders and a test subject, and then finish the quest. But he's leaving up 10 on the board, and if his opponent has a Gentle Megasaur, which he does, there's a pretty decent chance this game is over. Does Noblord have a choice, though?
Yeah, I don't know that he has. The play that I sort of alluded to as a possibility, at least, Seance into that, does give him, okay, I like this. So this means that heal here means he still has test subject.
Oh!
Well, that's not going to be lethal, right?
That is still a lot of damage.
Yeah, but a lot of damage doesn't mean anything if you're Amaraing next turn.
That's true. That's right.
So right now, Megasaur, Wind Fury is the game on the spot. And +3 attack.
That's exactly what Noblord was playing around.
Right, by healing himself means +3 attack does not kill him. So this play from Noblord.
Fantastic.
Yeah. So rather than this being 10 + 6 lethal, it means that, okay, he gets to still spend his next turn playing that second test subject, playing the Amara into this.
And then what starts getting really scary, too, is, how long will Viper allow things like the test subject and the Radiant Elementals to survive onto the board? Because, Topsy Priest, if you underestimate it, just saying, you know what, I'm going to keep hitting their life total aggressively and ignore their minions on board, they get some real crazy stuff. I mean, hypothetically, Noblord could have lethal next turn if he already preemptively played 3 mana worth of minions.
And Viper's taking his time figuring out, okay, he wants the attack, which is not necessarily 100% obvious.
Right.
Because, if he knows, okay, well, he's going to play an Amara next turn. Now, but this gives him just a lot of damage after that as well.
Exactly. And Noblord does have that Amara available to him, because I think test subject number 2 will complete the quest, and then he can play it. Does he draw first?
There's a little bit of awkwardness of playing his second test subject as far as his ability to be at least guaranteed he can complete his combo later.
That's true, but
one interesting thing from Viper's perspective, should Viper have killed the Radiant Elemental?
That's kind of what I was thinking.
Yeah, like if he knows that Amara is coming down, Amara has to come down, right? So should you use the 6 damage from your Amalgam to kill the Radiant Elemental to stop any potential shenanigans here?
No, I think that's a really good point. And more importantly, like, if Noblord is oh, is that a second powered shield?
That's actually well, it's not a really big deal because the Tide Collar still becomes 12 here, right?
Yeah, with the
Murloc.
Okay.
But it could be. There's a world in which that actually does matter. A second Megasaur. But because of the double powered shield, he has to play War Leader to get through the Amara.
Well, there's also a chance that the Juggle might snipe one of these 1-health minions.
It did. So now, so okay, he's cleared off both test subjects. So now, in order for Noblord,
he has to revive it now.
But he has to revive it when he can go off. In order for him to actually be able to get his combo off, now Viper's just playing anti-combo defense because Noblord is forced in the position to play both test subjects.
That said, Viper's hand is looking very weak after this. So if Noblord does have that mass hysteria.
Yeah.
And when you start having more than 3 minions or 4 minions onto the board, the math starts to like exponentially increase with the possible outcomes.
Right.
I tried to hear Monsanto one time talk about the possible variance and permutations of attacks that Mass Hysteria will do
Yes.
with like 4-on-4 minions. And he said something stupid like, you know, like millions of possibilities. And it's like, okay, I can't really fathom that. So, you know, I think Noblord might end up just pulling the trigger defensively and then has an opportunity to stick some minions onto the board.
Yep.
The question is do you trade beforehand or do you just attack after?
Well, it's weird because if you... Oh, is this like
oh!
that was not
That's not the one.
not great for Noblord here.
Yeah, I don't know if this Deadbringer actually does anything except puts a oh, it draws a Blood Mage down us. That is
All right.
That is a good draw here for Viper.
It is. I'm gonna go ahead and get
that is
Wind Fury.
Wind Fury is very good.
Wind Fury's 12 right now.
Reporting for duty.
Is it worth protecting your Tide Caller? Probably not. I mean, it's 6 damage you're missing, but at the same time, you are out of cards. You need to conserve your resources.
It does, but if you know that your opponent has Blood Mage Thalnos, it means that you're, I guess, you're potentially giving up 6 damage if your opponent just like Spirit Lashes you.
Yeah, there isn't no.
Your opponent's going to attack that anyway and Spirit Lash you.
Yeah, I mean there is no Spirit Lash in hand, but I think you're right.
But as far as like what are the sort of things that can go bad here? Like how important is that Tide Caller to you? What are these cards likely to be?
Right.
He's going for the Twilight's Call. All right. Isn't this his second Twilight's Call?
Yes.
So he can't get another test subject now, right?
Well, he could have. Yeah, he can't get it now. I think his hope was maybe like a Seance or something.
Yeah, because he could get a test subject and Seance it. Right. Is his goal?
Too
his goal
yeah,
there?
too many Deadwings are in the pool. Like 2 died in the beginning. Then he revived 2 more.
Yeah. Well, right. Exactly. His pool is so many Deadringers.
And then he played 1 more. So it's like 5 Deadringers, a Loot Hoarder, and 2 test subjects. It's like, well, yeah, statistically, it's going to be Deadringer most of the time. 12 plus 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 22
Reporting for duty.
with the Gentle Megasaur. So not enough for Viper to close this game out, but he can put his opponent on a 2-turn lethal. That Shadow Vision's draw is very big for Noblord, and it can help him find the Psychic Scream.
But what does, I mean, the question is, what does he even do at this point? Is he going to win by seancing a Megasaur and beating him down with it? I'm just trying to piece together because he's cast both Twilight's Calls. He's played both test subjects.
Actually,
he cannot generate an additional test subject.
Maybe
There's
you're
no
right.
way, right?
No, well, if he does, let's say he does Seance something.
Oh, there we go.
Well, if
Ride the Ziliax to victory.
I mean,
Ziliax Seance it. Get another one.
In all seriousness, he could just get a Megasaur, flip it with the Topsy-Turvy Divine Spirit, and then try to pressure that way.
I'm not saying that Noblord is out of this by any means, because there are like these, these corner case bizarre scenarios that can come up of just I'm going to kill you with minions with my combo deck.
Right.
But his primary road to victory, I believe, is completely gone.
Ends up going with Psychic Scream over the Spirit Lash. He had the Spirit Lash with Blood Mage Thanos and Stone Dust Board. Not very reliable.
Oh,
Divine
dear.
Favor.
Oh, and we see the pain on Noblord's face.
Woo.
That's getting Hall of Fame, but not just yet.
Yeah.
Not before it draws 5, 6 cards for Viper.
Ooh, Noblord is like, oh, man, if only I fast forward the clock to April. Oh, man. That is brutal, to say the least. And now Viper does not have to worry about hand economy issues, because if he was drawing 1 card per turn, that actually gave Noblord a legitimate chance to find an opportunity to stick a minion. And with this, I mean, Noblord does have a way to strike back with the Ziliax Seance combination, which can magnetize onto itself, but he needs a little bit of setup in time.
Yeah, he's got to just figure out, okay, previously, before that Divine Favor, he was like, all right, Viper's low on cards. Maybe I can assemble something like you mentioned, the Ziliax Seance. Maybe I can, win this game in a bizarre, honest way with my combo deck. But now, with just a bunch of cards in hand for Viper, that is looking so unlikely.
Looking for any semblance of a game plan here. Noblord has nothing.
He's just getting in there with the board.
Yeah, well, if you stick the board onto the board, it gives Noblord the ability to trade and maybe like make Zilliax stay alive. But that call to arms just allows Viper to pull out more cards from his deck. And remember, Viper still has that second Divine Favor we haven't really mentioned, which gives him the ability to feel a little bit more aggressive with how he uses his resources.
This may look weird. I've been attacking into Bloodyface down this. This is, again, to play around the threat of Spirit Lash, which Noblord finds.
Yep. Also, Noblord has to test for the secret. Sees that it's not redemption. This will see that it's not noble sacrifice.
He already found no sacrifice, no divine shield thing.
Yeah,
so now it's hidden wisdom. I believe it's Eye for an Eye or hidden wisdom are the two things that it could be.
Right.
And I think that he is unlikely to suspect Eye for an Eye. But here, yeah, Seance gonna get hidden wisdom. 2 more cards for Viper.
Oh man, it's brutal.
And you know, despite the fact that Viper's drawn so many cards, he has been Psychic Scream twice, so he still has so many more cards left in his deck.
Right.
Not to mention that just like he even if they were at similar points in fatigue, the hero power making Silverhand recruits is just eventually going to kill the priest.
Put this apple on your head.
Kind of wonder what Noblord's saving the topsy-turvy for. I think if I were in the position, I'd kind of want to try and maximize his potential to survive.
Yeah,
but
he's gonna maximize his time here. Hack things up, and Viper was the favorite coming in under both players' perspectives and takes a solid 3-0 win in the first game of this group.
We are back with some more Group A matches. I am Raven, and joining me is Sottle. It becomes a bit of a rare occurrence nowadays, I would say, but I'm happy at least to be on this desk back with you again.
I know, I've missed you, buddy. We've had some time apart. I've been having to deal with loud Americans instead, so nice to bring a little bit of British class back to the casting desk.
Yeah, and I think the break's done us good overall, I would say. If you're saying nice things to me already, I am quite happy, but I'm also happy with the matchup we've got coming up. It is going to be Tansoku versus HCT, and I'm excited to see this one, as I always am when we see Tansoku play. I feel like he's been a staple at HCT for quite a long time now.
He has, yeah. I thought he had been qualified for more events than he actually had, and that's not to do him a disservice. He has been here very frequently, but like you said, he feels like he's part of the furniture at this point, and is a player that we've got intimately familiar with. HCT less so. He's part of this new wave of Chinese players, I like to look at it, people who have really supplanted the thrones of the old guard, like the Omega Zeros and the Jason Joes that we've seen. We've seen a whole new wave of powerful Chinese players this year, and HCT chief amongst them. Yeah,
and we're seeing multiple waves of different types of decks and lineups as well. We can check out what the players have brought, because I feel like in this tournament specifically, I feel like every player has a different opinion on what a good lineup should be. And you know, these are no different, with Tansoku, for me, sticking out quite a lot, because he's one of the only players who's brought the combo priest. And when we asked him about it, he was surprised. He was like, I don't know why other people haven't brought this deck. It is very, very powerful.
Well, I mean, remains to be seen, because from my perspective, it's the weak point of his lineup for this matchup, at least, against HCT. If you were watching during the break, we had a little media piece there leading into this, where the players spoke about their respective lineups, and they both said, I think we both potentially have a weak deck coming out here. HCT is worried about his Malagos Druid, which my analysis says he's spot on. I think that's the weak point for him as well. But it's that Inner Fire Priest on Tansoku's side that's going to be tough for him to get through, from my perspective.
All right, well, let's find out anyway, because those decks are available. As we said, we did see the bans on the screen, but I believe we are ready to just get right into the match. Tansoku versus HCT. Like you said, I'm just excited to see exactly how this priest deck does.
Yeah, I mean, when it comes down to it in the head-to-head, if you look at those two problem decks, like the Mali Druid and the Inner Fire Priest, maybe that's the matchup where Tansoku has to really look at to get his Inner Fire Priest a win, because that is the idea. If you're not getting hit with those naturalizers, if you're making huge health minions, Druid is not going to have a good time dealing with that.
Yep, let's see how we go, though. HCT is going to start off on the Hunter, and Tansoku on the Paladin, which is the even Paladin, as you can see again. Maybe for one of the last times on the screen there, as the new announcement has come out of them being put into the Hall of Fame. But for now, let's focus on...
Poor old Genjamin, honestly.
That makes me laugh every time, and I honestly don't really know why.
That's why I said it. To be fair, I am fully on board with the Gen and Baku rotation idea, but I just like saying Genjamin.
Okay, I've got no follow-up for that one, but HCT, on the other hand, has a great early opening here. The candle shot to help deal with some of the Paladin tokens. The Hyena, along with the infamous combo of Hyena Springport with the Razormaw as well.
And I love this straight away from HCT. So many people, I think, would have been potentially just baited into playing their curve here, but Paladin, really going back to the beginning of time, there's been this key glaring hole in their game plan that you really have to learn, which is they cannot interact with minions early on. They don't have a 2-mana weapon or a fast minion that can come out and take care of, you know, like a Merc Spark Eel kind of card that can swing board states like this. So if you can manipulate a huge threat onto the board immediately, you can really start running wild with a minion like Scavenging Hyena.
Yeah, and especially just with the follow-up, Springport or Razormaw. So there are just options here for HCT as to, depending on what Tansoku chooses to do this turn, he can just pull anything out the bag, and either way is going to be quite the powerful turn. Now we get to see what decides, and even now there is an option to actually kill off this 2-2 instead.
Yeah, double Springport, definitely not the worst idea in the world here. Razormaw perhaps gives you more diversification of your threats, but again, I go back to that same point. It's not really until turn 4 that even Paladin is going to have any way of interacting with this growing Hyena, so certainly would not blame HCT for going all in here with the double rushing Springport.
Yeah, and I do like it, I think, because the Razormaw can whiff, or at least just not be great in this scenario, and I'd rather just not have that happen when you have a perfectly powerful turn that isn't rolling the dice a little bit and is just saying, well, this will guarantee happen. I put my Hyena. There's no real answer here, so at least I get to push some damage early game.
I was trying to get my brain to reconcile the idea of just going Candle Shot there with the Springport instead. You sacrifice 2 damage this turn on the Hyena because only 1 minion will die, but you have that front-loaded Candle Shot on the following turn, but I don't think it provides you any more beneficial situations on the turn 3, so yeah, I like the double Springport line.
Yeah, and I think the biggest deal as well is it's never too bad holding on to a Candle Shot when you have other options, because that one source of damage much later on a potentially bigger minion can actually save you so much more health than killing a 1-1.
Right. Now, HCT does have to be a little bit worried. This is really a key moment for playing this Hunter deck. If you've gone all in on an early Hyena, you have to recognize the point where a Hyena has to get really big to kill your opponent before they can do anything about it, right? Like, by all means, cash in this free early damage that I was talking about against Paladin, but now you really have to consider the idea of playing for the board as well, because now Spellbreaker, Blessing of Kings, and so on come into play, and perfect sequencing from HCT on the adaptation. Attacks first. If he picks up Wind Fury still applies. He nets the same damage as he would have done by doing it early, but by attacking first, he gives himself this incredibly crucial stealth option.
Yeah, the very powerful, you know, the outcome of getting +3 attack or +1/1 does not outweigh this stealth. This is the best pick, mainly because we can see the Spellbreaker on the far left. You might think, well, you know, yes, the Spellbreaker kill a minion, then, you know, it's still a 2/2 beast that's left on the board. Well, it's a lot scarier when it's a 6/4 that is only going to keep growing. And to be honest, at this point, Sol, maybe even just end the game.
Very, very possibly, and I think it's a great recognition from HCT. I said it's the time where he has to consider not just damage, but how to consolidate his board, and that was the perfect way of doing it. He just says, you know what, I'll sacrifice the potential of some damage with +3 attack, and I'll look for the stealth out instead, because that's the only thing that was going to protect him against not only Blessing of Kings, but in this case, specifically Spellbreaker.
And this Springport draw was huge because the numbers then add up that you can actually kill off.
Oh, I need a moment. Oh, I need a moment. Raven. Oh,
Hunter goodness. I love it. And there's the concede straight away from Tansoku. He just cannot do anything. And as you quite rightly said, Sol, even Paladin does not have game early on versus decks that do. And that just ran away with it for HCT, yeah. But very heads-up play, and I especially like that attack before the Razormaw came down.
It's exactly the kind of Heartstone game that will get a bad reputation, right? You drew a strong opener. It looked like you made 0 decisions and you won the game. It's not what happened. That game was losable. Yeah. If he hadn't have chosen to coin out the Hyena in the first place, could have been a different story. But that crucial moment was attacking first before the Razormaw. That was huge because he had to recognize that stealth was the very best outcome in that position, and he did just that.
And I think this is one of the big holes I've seen for a long time now in even Paladin. I feel like every time we're on this desk, I ask the question of, Why do people bring this deck? And I think the general answer, it's just an all-rounder. It can do well against late game, it can fight for some early game, and mainly just the powerful mid game it has. But when it does line up against a deck that just does one thing very well, it just always seems to fall over, at least in my experience.
I know this is your least favorite topic, but you do really get into fourth deck territory. You know, it's something that we will start to see very differently in the latter half of 2019 when we move to specialist format. Conquest forces you to bring a certain number of decks, and it's hard to build 4 decks that perfectly fit a strategy that you're trying to execute. So therefore, your third and fourth decks sometimes just look a little bit weak, but that's because the perfect options aren't there, and that's something that the single deck format...
We need more good decks!
Single deck format with specialists can potentially go some way to allow people make more concise strategies with their lineup.
Yeah, and we are not wasting any time here. We're going to be moving straight on to the next game. It's going to be HCT versus Tansoku. HCT currently needing 1-0, going for the odd rogue against this even paladin. Double Diamol in the opening hand, Sol. Who needs cold bloods anymore?
The face of terror, Diamol.
It's true. If I was Tansoku and I saw that opening hand, I wouldn't know what to do with my life right then.
But again, you look at that card on the far right, Vicious Fledgling, colloquially known as the Flappy Bird. It's, again, a huge problem for a deck like even Paladin to deal with because they just don't have fast options turn 1 to 3 to be able to shut minions like that down. The only way they can deal with a minion like that is to be ahead of the play when it comes down. Guess what prevents that from happening? 2 Diamols.
Exactly. Wild Pyromancer's the earliest minion that directly competes, along with the Swampoos, but those are cleaned up by the Diamols, as you said, so, you know, HCT even has just a get out of jail free card. If worst case scenario happens, never mind just the average chance of them not having that card early on. Choice of secrets here. Hidden Wisdom probably not going to get used auto defense matrix. It's going to be valuable just to try and stem those attacks and just stop them peeling off minions, and most importantly, protecting this Hydrologist, hopefully. Oh god, the hits just keep coming. HCT now just has a choice of exactly what he wants to do with this opener. Does he want a slightly beefier minion? Does he want the minion that can run away with the game? He's chosen for the latter in the form of the Vicious Fledgling.
Yeah, you have 4 3-drops in your hand and a coin and 2 mana. I think I want to start jamming 3-drops onto the board as early as possible. And again, I'm sorry, I've already beaten this point into the ground, but really the only reason HCT has the freedom to be able to do this is the fact that he knows Paladin just cannot answer this on turn 3.
This turn's a little bit more interesting, though, with the potential of Diamol hero power being very, very strong. Doesn't mean you just automatically go, Flappy Bird again, right. You know, and I do like this play. Let's just find out what the secret is, and also you still develop a very powerful minion on the board, even though it is just a 1-drop. Most importantly, the Fledgling gets to hit face, and a master of stealth. I'm choosing to believe HCT is, as that is just 2 in a row that have been very impactful in the series already.
Yeah. I'd like to sell you a line about how much skill was involved in that stealth pick, but nope, he just hit face and rolled stealth. That's what happened there.
I wish I was that skilled.
Me too, Raven.
The problem now is we look at Tansoku's hand. This board has to get a lot of work done because he has nothing to do next turn apart from press that hero power as of right now.
Yeah.
He has some powerful follow-up turns with the Spike Ridge Steed obviously being a huge issue for Odd Rogue to get through. They don't really have any tools that just negate Spike Ridge or make it easy apart from maybe this Void Ripper, but you still have to deal with the Death Rattle.
Yes. And I think that's why Tansoku is not in a particularly bad position right now, because he has all this stickiness with the Divine Shield minions on board, meaning he's quite likely, even with a poor turn next turn, to be able to land the Spike Ridge Steed on curve, especially since he has such a high percentage of picking up something nice and playable from the top of his deck next turn.
Also as well, this Kangor is negating a lot of this early push that HCT has in terms of the actual just health total of Tansoku here. So this Kangor does eventually have to die, probably get soaked up by the weapon this turn, but that puts Tansoku in full health.
And then very quickly, not at full
again,
health again.
Now he has 2 Divine Shields on that minion. No stealth this time.
So I imagine HCT is looking at playing another power 3-drop this turn. So he's potentially looking at equality clears that he has to play around, and yeah, that's probably what leads him towards that Divine Shield. It's also a little bit better against just Consecration coming down at 6 health, but if he'd have taken just extra health and played a second minion alongside it, equality Conk could have potentially ruined his life.
Yeah, and now the tools like Consecrate, as you mentioned, and the true silver champion, there's very limited options to be able to clean this board up nicely.
Yep.
And Tansoku did not draw a playable card this turn.
He didn't.
So this is literally hero power. Choose where my attack goes, cross fingers, hope the Spy Ridge that lands next turn.
Taking a look, I mean, his deck is fairly greedy. He could have drawn 2 Nerubian Unravelers, he could have drawn the Tarim, he could have drawn Valanir, Lich King, or Tyrion. So there was a few bricks there, but I think you'd have to consider him unlucky to not find a play on that turn.
3 drops, just keep marching on. And really nice play here. This is just very solid mechanical play. You kill off the minion because you know what your opponent runs.
Yes.
Spy Ridge Steed on 6. So if you don't give them a minion to be able to cast it straight on, this gives you almost an extra turn of damage that you wouldn't have had normally.
Yep, excellent restraint from Yuying. Super tempting just to want to ship that Flappy Bird to face. But he acknowledges the power of Spike Ridge Steed. Tansoku didn't really have too much of a decision on that point. It was just a choice of 6 drops, which were Genjamin Greymane, Wind Fury Harpy, or Hero Power Blessing of Kings as well. He could have potentially played as a bootleg 6 drop.
Now with the help of the SI7 agent, there is enough damage to kill this Greymane from hand. I don't see a real reason not to go for it.
Sorry, what do you want to do?
You can play the Void Ripper, which does nothing but activates SI7 agent, and then you should be able to clean it up. It does require the attack though from the minion because of that health swap.
Well, you just want to ship a 5/5 Hench Clan Thug into your opponent's minion? I really do not want to do that.
It's just a thought because Greymane has so much health. Do you have a good way to get through it with, I guess, on the odds that he doesn't draw a playable minion to combine with Vilespine Slayer next turn? If you were scared of Spike Ridge Steed, then Spike Ridge goes on to gain Greymane. That's a lot of damage required.
So the Flappy Bird already has Wind Fury, right? So he has 3, 6, 9, 12, 13. He has 15 damage next turn. So he still doesn't have lethal set up this way by not sending the damage to face. Kind of strange. I guess the game making a trade could have prevented lethal anyway, and he showed us that he had a potential read on the Spike Ridge Steed on the previous turn.
Right.
I really like going face there. I don't know why that trade happened personally.
It's a tough call, right? Because clearing the board going into 6 always stops Spike Ridge.
Yes.
Unless they have a coin, obviously.
Clearing the board on turn 7 never stops Spike Ridge by the same token.
But it stops the trade plus the minion being significantly higher health.
Right.
And you don't have a silence. There's only that Vilespine. And then you would need to draw 1 or 2 drop to combo it.
Right.
And if not, you lose your whole board into it if you want to try and attack. So I do definitely understand there's well, I can kill again. It's not too much of a loss.
But to counterpoint, everything you've just said about needing to draw an activator for the Vilespine Slayer is also true in this best case scenario situation, or worst case scenario situation of just Hero Power Spike Ridge Steed, which you knew was going to happen. Right? Like, he needed a draw. He ended up drawing the Fungal Mancer, which works as well.
I guess where you'd split the difference is like, this is killable, where you can still win the game afterwards. If you just chunk into a buffed Gen, which would have been 12 health.
7/12, yeah.
It would have been not killable. Yeah. It would have killed all the minions you could trade into. A rough moment for Tansoku here because, yeah, you've got your late game. You don't have enough mana to play it all, though, so...
Imagine it has to be Steed again, right? It's the only play that gives him any chance of being alive, and even then, I'm not sure if he even lives on board necessarily. Pyro Steed would take the 3/1 off the board, which would help a lot.
But it would be a 5/7.
Yes. And 3/6. So yeah, he would only take 2 to face currently, as is showing.
He might have to.
Like to play with fire?
He's going to go for it and try and hold on.
But again, draw for the Vilespine is not there again. That's 2 whiffs on combo activators for this Vilespine
Is Leroy good enough, though? It is, right?
2, 3, yeah, the
Leroy
Leroy trades the
Fury.
2-6 afterwards, yeah, it's fine.
Wow, 2 games in a row, lightning fast pace. And Tansoku is just trying to hold on every single game. This even Paladin is just getting stomped, to be completely honest. A couple of bad draws from Tansoku, but HCT's just not letting up. Go, 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 go.
Yeah, and the Even Paladin wasn't even really one of the decks for Tansoku that was particularly badly positioned. He had a couple of good matchups, and he's actually queued reasonable ones. You know, the mid-range Hunter was not a bad matchup for him on paper, but it's just that explosive start and the quality play from HCT that's left him behind. So now he's facing a huge deficit without... We haven't even seen that Inner Fire Priest, which is the big question mark for me. So there is a huge hurdle now for Tansoku to get over.
Yeah, there's still a lot to play for, though. HCT is leading at 2-0, but Tansoku can still fight back. It's only game number 2. We've got plenty more coming up, so don't go anywhere. More Heartstone coming back right back. Championships, we currently have Tansoku versus HCT, and HCT currently in the lead 2-0 in a lightning-fast series so far, Soto. Is it going to be a 3-0 is my question.
I mean, if you're going to make me stick my neck on the line, I think the smart answer would be no, because he's left with his most problematic deck for the series, which is Mali Druid. Is it possible? Yes, absolutely. He has, you know, 3 matchups in the range of 40%, or 2 matchups in the range of 40%, and a bit of a wild card against the Inner Fire Priest, where I will confess I have not seen that matchup play out in modern forms too much, but certainly in older expansions, it was a deck where Inner Fire Priest could really get some work done because of Druid lack of removal options. But he is a favorite in the series because of the number of bites he has at these 40% shots, but will it be a 3-0? The stats say no.
Well, let's find out, as Tansoku has chosen to queue the Paladin again and saying that, you know, gotta win with this deck anyway, may as well keep it cooking. Hydrologist and now Corpse Taker, I would say the missing link to the past 2 games, in my opinion, is there was no strong 4-drop, especially the strength of Corpse Taker, to really get played early enough to have an impact in the game.
We have turned our curse into our strength.
I think for Tansoku as well, I think playing Even Paladin here makes sense. Of course, it doesn't really matter in the long run, but it is also probably his best deck in terms of being able to win this matchup. He's, you know, somewhere in the region of 62-63% probably in this matchup now, but Mali Druid is as well slower in having to do what it needs to do. Spreading Plague, not the powerhouse against Even Paladin that it would be against Odd Paladin, and so these kind of just chunky mid-range threats can eventually just plow through and put on too much damage.
Yeah, the interesting point that HCT made was when we were talking to him this week, he actually said he just likes, he's brought and likes to just play decks he is comfortable with and enjoys playing, because Mali Druid, you wouldn't say right now is, you know, top tier, best of the best to bring, but he's bringing it, and we've heard that from a few other players as well. So I am excited to see these decks like Tansoku's Priest, HCT Mali Druid, just to see how well they actually do, because I do personally rate like comfort with deck at a very high point of whether to bring it or not.
Yeah. I think there's an argument to say that if you are a professional player, you should find out what the best lineup is for any given tournament and then use your time to make yourself comfortable with that lineup. But yes, I imagine, you know, skill level with a deck, comfort with a deck, familiarity with a deck is hugely rewarding.
HCT has this Twig of the World tree, which, yes, will enable big combos later on, but also will just chip away at Paladin tokens. So it's 1 damage, normally is quite useless, and it's not, yeah, it makes you get the odd trade, or you just hit it to face to get the Twig to break. But in this matchup specifically, HCT is going to get some value out of it, and I wouldn't be too surprised if he just starts getting it online now. I feel like Druid can always make a use of that Twig breaking. Yeah,
for sure. It's growth into Twig. That's the curve that he's had so far. It's fairly obvious as far as the Druid openings go. A little bit slower than it used to be now because he had to coin out the Wild Growth. But you can see, as you said, the usefulness of it will really just be about picking away at this board. You saw him preemptively set himself up with a swipe there by attacking the Hydrologist instead of clearing a token. But because Tansoku has the Acidic Swampoos in hand, he's not going to get one of those huge Twig combos off in the late game, but he is going to get to use it as a source of repetitive damage just to manipulate his removal a little bit better and keep those tokens under control.
Right, and now Tansoku finally has a powerful mid-game turn with the redemption with this Glass Knight. Not only is Glass Knight a pain to deal with in itself, because the Divine Shield and 3 health can be awkward for a lot of classes to do, but the redemption means it's just going to keep coming back and causing problems.
Nourish picked up on curve as well is huge.
Where are you going with this, Nourish? Are you ramping?
I think branching paths in hand is emergency card draw if you do need it, if you don't pick up the UI in a timely fashion. You would most likely like to use that armor at some point in this game. You know, branching paths for card draw is usually a sign that you are losing as a combo druid player. But he does end up card drawing.
My point was, okay, you gain the crystals. You can play the Tyrant. What is your next turn? Would be my worry. Because you're not drawing, obviously, because you're using it to gain crystals.
Right.
And then if your next turn is using branching paths to draw, say you just whiff on that one draw, then it's another turn. And as you rightly said, I lean towards the serious amount of armor you can gain in this matchup with branching paths outside a potential card draw. But with the Twig live, he either pops it in 2 turns anyway, or it gets oozed, in which he has the mana.
Yes. Yeah, I think that is crucial that he does always have that Twig to rely on. And even if Acidic Swamp Ooze does come down, it's really not the end of the world for him, because he's not going to get his big swing turn, but he is going to get the UI mana that he needs. So actually, now that I look at it, with the Twig already equipped, using Nourish there to find the UI more than anything is probably worthwhile, because now he can just gain 12 and chill with this remaining branching path.
See there, the Glass Knight as well. The Redemption did just go off while you were making your point, and then again, it's just frustrating. He's already seen Swipe. He's already trying to swing this Twig. There's a 2/6 Taunt in the way now. But there is still Wrath. There is still Moonfires. There's still Spellstone. And in this matchup, you don't need to do a full burst on the Paladin to kill them. Right. You normally just get the board, and then you won after that. Okay, 1 mana off being able to kind of play around this Twig. And by that, I mean he could have played Corpse Taker and then Blessing of King's it to say, well, I won't break your Twig, you want to break it, and if you do, you're going to take a lot of damage from that.
I think HCT would have been okay with that scenario.
I'm just trying to think the best that Tansoku can do, because after seeing card draw, do you really want to break that Twig for him with the ooze?
Yes. I would like my opponent to have 8 less mana next turn, yes.
Okay,
or 6 less mana, I guess, when you add in the 2 extra crystals, you're ramping them.
I must move quickly.
You know, ramping the Druid to 10, yeah, they can UI you, but they can do that anyway, but you also just give them the opportunity to just have a game-ending turn, right? When any deck,
no, you're right.
When any deck can spend 18 mana in 1 turn, you're probably not winning very often.
Corpse Taker does come down, and not have the Divine Shield, but at least just gain Taunt Wind Fury as it is a threat.
Right.
The Divine Shield doesn't often make it a threat, it makes it more of a nuisance. But yeah, having the better end of the stick, I'd say, for Tansoku there.
So HCT actually has a really nice UI hand here. He had a full hand, which made the UI kind of awkward, but because the rest of his hand was Innovate, Spellstone, double Moonfire, he really just... His problem was working out which of the cards he wanted to spend his 0 spare mana on, and not how he was able to do that.
Yeah, HCT pretty much had full control over his hand size. That turned pretty easy. Now, double Spreading Plague, Malygos with Floop. Alex just for fun at this point. I mean, all the tools are there for HCT right now. Tansoku can drop this Tyrion he's hovering over, but you've just got to ask yourself, with this much armor, is he going to get to swing with it, or swing 3 times with the weapon?
HCT's tough turn, honestly, here.
I like Malygos.
I mean, I'm leaning towards it as well, just because you do then get that back up with the Floop anyway, but you also have the option to just go potentially full board control here and actually invest your Moonfires in clearing out the Tyrion and keeping a 5/5 in play as well.
I'm wondering, the main threats you feel against Paladin or Tansoku at this point is, this is the kind of least damage you're going to take at this point if you play Malygos, right? And then afterwards, you have the Spreading Plagues if your opponent goes wide. And even Paladin needs minions to do damage, so they probably will. And then you always have the Floop to just drop down as and when, and the Spreading Plagues should get you there often enough, especially with that card on the far right being branching paths, means that, oh, do I need more health? Did he hit me very hard with Blessing of Kings? Or has he gone wide and I can draw cards into, say, another swipe or maybe a bit more removal?
So this Alex Straza option that HCT took, is indicating that he's actually interested in setting up some kind of win condition for himself. And if you're doing that, then it makes sense to do it this way because you get the Alex out of your hand before you set up your Flabidinous Floop, right? If you play Mali first, then you have this Floop in your hand that you need to play before you play your Alex, or you're going to lose your duplicated Malagos.
Funnily enough, it's also kind of a weird backup if Tansoku, like your Blessed of Kings, True Silver Champion all to face, he could also 4-mana Alex himself. To buff his health back. Just as like a side effect, basically. It is there and it is possible.
A legal Heartstone play.
With the highest of praise from you, Sol. I love it.
Auto Defense Matrix looking to refresh this Divine Shield on the Tyrion.
That's the Kings on the Kango. I think that was.
Yep.
Now this is a threat, mainly because that is 10 health a turn if it can attack. And even more combined with the True Silver Champion swings the following turn.
Right. But he's looking to find himself some health as quickly as possible because he knows, essentially, he can afford not to heal this turn, probably, right? Because the Mali Druid can't set up 15 with Twig gone and no Malagos already played. If he doesn't set up some kind of healing for himself this turn, then HCT can spend this turn playing Malagos. And then Tansoku needs to be able to heal immediately, in theory, right? Because Flabidinous Floop plus more damage can beat the 15. So he needed to make the big healing threat this turn so that HCT cannot just freely drop his Malagos and say go.
I wonder.
At this point, though, HCT, I guess we'll see the true comfort and experience with this deck because he can deviate, you know, Malfurion, branching past 2 Spreading Plagues. HCT could just say, actually, we'll just play the long game if you really want to,
that's what I was talking about on the
yeah.
previous turn. He had the option to go Mali and use Moonfires to take care of the Tyrion and have this board that was a 4-12 and a 5-5. And yeah, you're playing against an equality deck. That can go wrong, but it was definitely a line that you could have looked at in terms of just trying to dominate the board for yourself. I said that HCT clearly was trying to set up some kind of burst damage win for himself by dropping the Alex, which, to be fair, is not a bad board position card in itself. It's an 8/8. It does do a lot of stuff on the board. But yeah, and HCT now probably does have to bail out of that burst damage plan and look for some kind of board position.
What do you think of double Spellbreaker? It negates the second Plague to a certain extent, because the trades would have to happen and then so on. You do push a lot of damage, and I feel like Tansoku will respect the ability for HCT and the Druid to actually go late and just not play the, oh, I can't burst you, I lose, you know, as we've just thought. I did wonder.
Your magic
be
shall
one.
not save.
Sports time.
Has become our greatest strength.
Yeah, this is a huge issue now for HCT. The burst win condition is all but gone. That swipe now can be paired with the Floop, but he does need to find a turn in between that just to play Malagos down, transform that Flabidinous Floop from Alex Straza into Malagos, and then has swipe Moonfire coming out after it, but still, only 21. And still, the Crystal Smith Kangor on the board, just threatening to heal for 10 per turn.
Yeah, I was trying to see if there was a realistic way to try and kill the Kangor and then play the Alex offensively again, but I don't think you can then piece enough together to get the kill, because there is a Malfurion hero power. That's doing 3 a turn if you want it to. Disregarding taunts, of course.
It's possible, right?
But you know what I mean? Like,
theoretically,
can get there.
It's possible.
Yeah.
There's still a Naturalize left, I believe.
Yeah, he's only used one.
So you could take the line of, like, you plan to Naturalize that, you Alex the face, you swipe them at some point, and then your second Mali plus 2 Moonfires is lethal after that if they don't heal. It's like a really sketchy 3-turn win condition. The more I started to elaborate on it, and it's 3 turns long, it involves not dying in those 3 turns, drawing cards you don't have in your hand yet, and your opponent not drawing more healing in the meantime.
It's hard to draw cards you do have in your hand.
I started to talk myself out of it very quickly, so I definitely don't blame HCT for diverting. Maybe a little bit late, in my opinion, on going to this Malagos board control strategy.
Look into Sottle's mind as he goes on an emotional roller coaster as to which lines of play to go for.
Sometimes
like, that was a very up and down like monologue going on there.
Well, sometimes you just gotta let your brain take over and hope that what comes out the mouth isn't too stupid. Like the stream of consciousness just happens and you just ride it where it goes.
I can't afford to let my brain take over.
No, I know. I mean, if anything, you could probably afford to let your brain take over a bit more.
I think you're giving a lot of credit to my brain, so.
That's also true, yeah.
I must move quickly.
This is just a lot of damage that Tansoku has. He still has 2 swings of a True Silver. This secret is the Divine Shield activation, so this Tyrion is I guess, planned to stick around and keep punching people for 6, so this True Silver can just get damage done, and I don't think Tansoku actually needs minions on the board.
I agree.
Why is he not swinging this True Silver is my question now.
In case he needs it for healing at crucial points in the following turns. Unless it directly sets up lethal for him on a following turn, I don't really see why he needs to. Because like you said, it's not like he's going to be restricted on mana in terms of having to play minions. Like, minions are kind of detrimental to him at this point.
Yep.
Because of exactly this situation. Knows that the Spreading Plagues still have to come, knows that there are branching paths to back all that up as well.
Also, if you look at a couple of these minions, or maybe even just one, like, should live, and you still have to draw your eyes to Yuying's hand, which does include a 4-mana Malygos and a Swipe, which is very, very powerful indeed. Just as a board player at this point, as opposed to killing your opponent. Yuying did state that he thinks the mental state as a player is one of the most important things about being a Hearthstone competitor. And I think moments like this are testing that, right? It's like, you've lost your sort of plan A. Can I keep it together to, pull off plan B or plan C?
Yeah, I actually asked him specifically why he thought we've seen such a change of the guard in terms of the Chinese players. And what he cited specifically was not that these new Chinese players that are kind of eclipsing the names that we saw in the last 2 years or so, didn't think they were technically better players or anything. He specifically pointed out that he felt that they had better mental preparation and better attitudes and, better handle on the psychological side of the game.
And he definitely wasn't the only player to say that during player interviews either. I feel like as time goes on, they're respecting more and more that it's not about just how well you can play on any given day. It's about holding focus throughout the tournament. Right. Now there's a lot of low attack minions on Tansoku's side of the board. It would suffer a little bit, but it would get one attack in with Tyrion, but this Tyrion just doesn't look half bad, especially now he could attack with Tyrion into one Tyrion, and the True Silver would actually clean up another one as well.
I wonder.
Yeah, it's whether you want to use the True Silver in that spot at the sacrifice of playing 2 extra minions yourself as well, additionally alongside that. Because you're giving up Hero Power Armani Berserker in that position, just to deal with a 3/3 from your opponent.
But then you lose an extra minion by not being able to trade with the weapon.
Yeah, well, I mean, you have a 3/7 taunt in the way of those extra minions.
Maybe you just don't swing at all.
So Tansoku's looking at Consecration here instead.
I must move quickly.
Having drawn that Nerubian Unraveler, it's a tech card that we really haven't talked about in the series. A very popular tech card overall in the tournament. I think a lot of people, Tansoku included, really predicted a lot of people bringing heavy combo-style decks, right? The kind of lineup that we saw from Noblord in the opening series. And so Nerubian Unraveler, pretty much one of the best techs that you have available against that kind of strategy right now.
Right, and it's that, or as a common difference, is the Mojo Master. It's a legendary that will reduce the mana down, but we do see the Malygos and the Swipe cleaning up a lot of this board. There's a UI, and there is the Moonfire going down now, so Ashbringers are quick for Tansoku, but this is frankly just a good amount of damage on board.
Yep.
Setting up lethal. This is what's nice as well with Malfurion that I guess we've just not seen for a while, is that, does 3 damage a turn.
Right.
That's a lot.
And now with Tansoku with no clear insight, no equality option that he can use to clear this board without taking damage himself, he's going to potentially find himself in some serious trouble. I think we saw him mouse over at the start of the turn the Nerubian Unraveler option to see if that can potentially keep him alive. Now he can True Silver himself up to 9, go down to 6 by attacking the 3/3. And then by leaving the Unraveler in play, no, it's just LFyueying Hero Power would kill him at that point.
That's it. The Unraveler beats the UI from hand lethal, but it does not beat the good old 2-mana Hero Power that will deal him 3 to the face. And it's a tough one. The deck just didn't get there, and I think HCT just about held on. If Tansoku could have just got through this, you can start to see, well, HCT's kind of just out of stuff to win the game, apart from this Hero Power. Unless we're missing something.
Yeah, unless Tansoku's found something incredibly creative that I can't see, he is going to fall to a 0-3 defeat here. Or if you're an optimist, HCT going to a 3-0 victory instead, putting 1 on the board for China. And yeah, even Paladin just found wanting in that scenario. Mali Druid was the big question mark for HCT, but he was able to get it over the line thanks in part to a very, very powerful opener. He had Growth into Twig, which even though it was answered, it still functioned as mana ramp for him in the end. And we saw, in the end, it was really kind of a Malagos board control play that ended up winning the game. I'd really like to rewind 5 or 6 turns before that, and if he'd gone for the Mali board control play a little bit earlier, how that would have worked out for him. It's all much ado about nothing in the end, because he did end up winning the game and winning the series, and I'm pretty impressed with what I saw from him.
Hello everybody, welcome back to the HCT Winter Championship. My name is TJ, and I'm joined by the Admiral. That's Admirable. Back on the desk together. How you feeling, bud?
Dang, TJ. We're back at it again. Casting Heartstone games.
That's right, that's Admirable.
I'm doing great.
Yeah, and the match we have coming up for you next, as previewed by that little media piece we just showed you, is going to be Bloodyface versus Tyler. And both these players have made quite a storm of Hearthstone success in 2018/2019. Bloodyface coming off of a runner-up performance, losing to Language Hacker in just our last championship event. And also, because of his performance in that event, a lot of players, even here at this tournament, have said that Bloodyface is one of the scariest opponents in Hearthstone right now.
It certainly is. I think that Bloodyface's technical play at the last event that we saw him at was impeccable, and I made a point to talk about it quite a bit. But when it came to this tournament and we asked the players in interviews who they thought the strongest player in this tournament was, there were a number of players who iterated that they thought not only was he the strongest player in the tournament, but perhaps the strongest in the world at this point. You know, that title really went to, amongst the players that we interviewed anyway, to Bunny Hopper, to HCT, who's qualified through China during, you know, the points race, and Bloodyface. And it was surprising to me that it was so distinct across the players that they had 3 particular names in mind and that he was one of them.
Yeah, it's a pretty big accolade for a player that kind of floated under the radar for a long time, had some big preliminary/playoff performances throughout 2016 all the way to 2018. Never made that big breakthrough. Now has, and already has proved himself as one of the best in the world. But
he really blew up this year when he decided to take the step into full-time play.
Yeah, that's right. Well, we have game number 1 coming up here, and it is going to be the Hunter for Bloodyface and the Paladin for Tyler.
You know, this matchup, the way the decks ended up panning out, certainly worked out in Tyler's favor. With Bloodyface having Quest Rogue on the other side, it's not exactly the kind of lineup that he was looking for in this tournament. He was anticipating much more control-ish style of decks that you can prey upon with Quest Rogue and the ability to just continue to compound the advantage you gain. Against Tyler, though, Tyler's really just chosen, you know, 4 pretty good decks. They all have a potential to be fairly aggressive at a certain point in the game. They all have you know, the potential to open very strong and then have, you know, an explosive finish. And those are the kinds of decks that I think are dangerous for Bloodyface. I think his mid-range Hunter is really suited best to take on that style, but where his Xerix Priest and his Quest Rogue are concerned, I think those are the ones that can struggle to just very strong minions consistently throughout the game.
Yeah, and one of the key choices that Bloodyface has made for this mid-range Hunter is to put 2 baited arrows in his deck over a copy of Tundra Rhino, which was an interesting choice. And because of that, we actually sat down and spoke with him about that impactful choice for this tournament specifically. So take a look.
So while Baited Arrow might not be an intuitive card to play, I think it's actually one of the best cards to play mid-range Hunter. I personally believe it's core. I wouldn't play the deck without it.
And we actually had a chance to talk with him a little bit more in depth about it, and it made a lot of sense how he explained it. He asked us when he sat down with the casters, what is the most popular 5-drop in the format right now? Neutral 5-drop, and it's Ziliax. And if you think about it in that context, Ziliax is a big tempo swing for the Hunter if you're able to play Baited Arrow. He trades over with the Ziliax, you Baited Arrow, have a 5/5 in its place, and negate half the healing, which made a lot of sense. And also he said that one of his bans is, well, not in this series, but is Priest, is pretty strong against his lineup. And he said, well, against Priest, the extra copy of Tundra Rhino that you gain is not that great against anything other than Priest where you're trying to force an early Psychic Scream. So it just, small choices like that can make a big difference in tournaments like this.
Yeah, that's largely the game outside of the game, right? You still need to have strong in-game technical play, but there's a lot going on outside of the game where the deck building is concerned. You know, in our first match, for instance, that was a match that was definitely determined by the way that players build their lineups. I think that Viper had a big edge against what Noblord had brought to the tournament, and it played out that exact same way.
Yeah. Mid-range Hunter, the most popular deck choice for the tournament. No surprise, because it is a very powerful deck. One of the things that it was lacking was its ability to keep pressure up throughout the mid stages of the game. If they missed a key draw or a key turn, they would fall behind and lose the game inevitably.
Yeah.
But now they have Master's Call, which allows you to have that refill, allows you to keep control of the board. And of course, there's always Deathstalker Rexar, those control matchups where you need that inevitability and that resource generation. So just a few tools that it's gotten over the course of the last year has pushed it into that tier 1 spot.
I think what's really cool about Master's Call is that it really makes you take into account how you build your deck, where a lot of our prior Beast Hunter decks were often seated around Houndmaster. It was sticking a board early and then getting the payoff from that card. And when you have Houndmaster in your deck, Master's Call is, you know, significantly weaker sometimes, where you're going to have a Houndmaster in that pool, and as a result, you discover one of those minions instead of picking 3 of them up. You know, that taking into account puts you in a different position where you have a 3-mana draw 3 beasts from your deck effect, and you have to take a look at then, well, now how do I get my late game advantage? And it lets you build the deck in a more flexible way, where we're starting to see Dire Frenzies included into the deck so that you can shuffle a big minion in and draw it later with Master's Call. We're seeing the Deathstalker Rexar play a super impactful role because Master's Call helps you reach that option sooner by pulling 3 beasts out of your deck. Speak of the devil. And I think it's just one of those cards that it's going to stick around for a while, and this is like the new face of Hunter you're looking at, is decks built around Master's Call. 3-mana draw 3, that's just a good card.
Really good. And draw 3 cards that you basically curated when you created your deck.
Yep.
With that limitation of having to be beast. But take a look at this matchup. We also have to talk about the evolution of Even Paladin in the metagame, where with the change to equality, and of course just a change to the meta in general, this deck has changed kind of its identity. It used to be lumped in with aggressive decks, and it still is sometimes. But I think the big change is that it's gotten a lot more mid-range. It's gotten a lot heavier. We're seeing Nerubian Unravelers, Mojo Master Zihi, a lot more top end with the deck, and equality sometimes cut all together. So it kind of just plays that board control game, and if I stick a big threat, I can suit it up and hit my opponent in the face, and it reminds me of, you know, mid-range decks of old.
Yeah, and that to me is really playing on the same effect too. You know, the difference is now the mid-range decks that we currently have are much more powerful than they used to be. You know, specifically for me, I'm looking at Spike Ridge Steed, Sunkeeper Taram, and then the Lich King.
Yeah.
You know, it's quite rare, I think, that you could create an 8-mana minion that outdoes Ragnaros, but I think Lich King comes pretty close.
Yeah, I would definitely agree. Also has benefit against a wide board, which Ragnaros didn't always do unless you were able to snipe base with your opponent at 8 health and a bunch of 1/1s on board. But getting into this game, kind of just a battle for board, which is what this comes down to. Whichever player takes control of the board will end up winning the game.
I was like, I know he's going to finish this thought. I just don't know exactly how yet.
Yeah, I was trying to think, like, will finish the game unless they draw their board clear. But Tyler doesn't have qualities, as I had mentioned for my previous point, which is a big thing because if he falls behind, very tough for him to get back in the game.
Right. To me, that's really the direction that Even Paladin ended up taking when it lost equality at the 2-mana slot, was that you don't have this come from behind effect anymore, so you have to get more aggressive early on. And if you're going to get that aggressive early on, you're going to have to be able to back it up, which spells early stuff middle stuff, and then late stuff. You don't have any fancy tricks in the deck. It's pretty straightforward. So that is a scary aspect in that, you know, if things get out of control, they're out of control. But it's a lot of times it's just more powerful feeling where your hand doesn't get bogged down with qualities in a spot where you don't need them because you're ahead, and then you end up getting behind because you don't have the right card.
Yeah. Well, here's that baited arrow that we talked about. We saw Bloodyface talk about as well.
It's a really interesting turn here for Bloodyface where you don't typically see this many options available for a Hunter deck, where, you know, he could get the Rexar hero power online, but that costs him a lot of tempo. He could end up using Baited Arrow here, and I imagine Timberwolf would come down alongside that. To me, the tempo play is going to be the strongest play here.
Yeah, we talked about how impactful controlling the board is in this matchup. If you effectively give Tyler a full turn of development without your own development before that, it's going to be really tough for you to make a comeback unless Deathstalker Rexar gives you some fantastic options.
Yeah. Which
is hard because he only have 7 mana to work with, 5 mana for an impactful zombies, and he'd be playing off curve.
Yeah, the only real thing I would look to consider here is that Bloodyface could have used the hatchet that he still has with the Scavenging Hyena to take out the Spellbreaker on the other side, the 4/3, and then just drop Savannah Highmane. Yeah. Savannah Highmane in this spot would have left him with a 1/2 and then a 6/5 alongside of it. So his board currently looks a little bit stronger.
It looks a little bit stronger now, but he needs a full turn to set up the Savannah Highmane, whereas Baited Arrow could protect the Savannah Highmane.
Where did the hatchet just go? Next to the hero. He didn't swing with it, did he? Am I crazy? That just did. He had a 2/1 weapon.
So he Baited Arrow the 1/1.
Yeah. He
And
used a
then
3/1 to trade
over
the
the 4/3. And
Where's the hatchet?
He pushed 2 with the Dire Mole.
Did he push 2 with the Dire Mole? He did push 2 with the Dire Mole. So he used the hatchet to swing at the 1/1. There we go.
No, because he Baited Arrow the 1/1.
We Baited Arrow the 1/1. You're right. What happened to it?
It's there. He has 2 attack.
What? All right. Well,
what in the world?
Yeah. Well,
there.
What the heck is going on? I am freaking out. All right. Well, now that I'm past that point, long story short, Bloodyface took tempo. That's where Paladin struggles because it doesn't come from behind much anymore.
Still has a hatchet charge in the tank. There we go.
But you can see the difference in like the Savannah Highmane and the Baited Arrow. Bloodyface might have not gotten the opportunity with Baited Arrow to actually make the 5/5. And I think that's why he ended up going with that play is Savannah Highmane is much less situational than the Baited Arrow is. You know, the situation that pans out for Bloodyface is he gets to get even more ahead when he Baited Arrows this turn because he'd be dropping a Crackling Razor Maul over it with this, instead of the Savannah Highmane by itself. But long story short, I think that those are non-factors and Bloodyface is just at a massive advantage.
Yep. Tough situation here, though. Doesn't know what that secret is, and the big things on his mind are Noble Sack and the Auto Defense Matrix.
Yeah.
Auto Defense Matrix is pretty big in this scenario because he has to break the Divine Shield, and by doing so, also wants to make sure that he's checking for Noble Sacrifice. And if it's Auto Defense Matrix, then he has to put a big attack after he checked for Noble Sacrifice into probably the Divine Shielded Corpse Taker.
Yeah,
which is also
so
brutal.
smart here. Bloodyface with the extra life to expend, he's willing to take the risk on just taking 7 damage and it being Auto Defense Matrix and getting a payoff as a result. That risk ends up panning out even better for him because it's a Noble Sacrifice instead.
Yeah.
So at this stage, I'm going to say that Tyler is pretty much shut out of the game, and I just don't think he's capable of getting back into it at this point.
Yeah, this is one of those situations where Deathstalker Rexar is also tempo because it allowed him to get rid of the possibility of having to check for both Noble Sacrifice and Auto Defense Matrix and narrowing it down to checking for both at the same time with the Hatchet Swing. Now, you said out of the game, but Tyrion is... he's a big boy.
It's quite large, and I don't think that Bloodyface is necessarily excited about seeing Tyrion here. But
Iron
that was
Beak
an Iron
Owl.
Beak Owl, yeah. Okay, well now he's pretty excited about seeing Tyrion here.
Yeah.
you know, this would have ended up in Bloodyface having a tempo loss, but the difference is that he has Deathstalker Rexar online now. So he's just going to be building beasts while Tyler's just operating on the natural card.
Yeah.
So, you know, you look at Tyler's deck list, and the Lich King is still there, Sunkeeper Tarim's still there, still both Spike Ridge Steeds. Some pretty big stuff to pick up, but you also look and there's Consecrations, and there's a Crystal Smith Kangor, and there's 2 copies of Acidic Swamp Ooze. Like, there's a lot of nonsense that's in the deck as well. The average draw is just so much better for Bloodyface at this point.
Yeah. The average draw plus the average pickup from the zombies. So.
Yeah. And also, just, you know, the average 7/9 that's hit you in the face twice now.
Yep.
It's the law of high main.
And Bloodyface has Unleash the Hounds plus Scavenging Hyena in the hand.
Whoa.
Whoa.
Yeah, you know, I'm curious what Bloodyface is actually thinking about in this scenario. It could just be that he's so far ahead that he's like, I don't really know what's going to get there. Spike Ridge Steed's kind of, you know, not fun for me. I'll just take care of it and handle, you know, a Spike Ridge Steed mini that's smaller in a very easy way. You know,
yeah.
I think that Bloodyface, either way he plays this game, he's going to end up with a big advantage.
Yeah. He knows that he can play this trading game because he has the resource advantage in the long term.
Yeah. It's funny how this ends up lining up just perfectly for what the play actually was. And that's exactly what Bloodyface was thinking. Once that happens, the Valenier plus the Savannah High Main onto the Valenier Wind Fury Harp, he's going to do it.
Yeah.
And Lethal will do it too.
Yeah, and that is going to do it. He had a couple outs there with the Inno Companion for Lethal, plus a zombie. So whichever way you slice it, Bloodyface takes a convincing game #1 victory in this series over Tyler.
Yeah, just that's Mid-Range Hunter in a nutshell. If you cannot check it and put it on the back foot, it's going to be able to do whatever it wants to do.
Yep.
And that is the reason so many players have brought it. It is a force to be reckoned with.
Yeah, reason why a lot of players are banning it as well in this case, which is exactly what Bloodyface did against Tyler because he didn't want to play against that mid-range hunter. But that's Bloodyface taking that first game. That one's in the books. We're going to see if Tyler can make a comeback here. We're going to have to go to a break. When we come back, more HCT Winter Championship of day #1 competition, one of the initial matches for Group B. Bloodyface currently leads 1-0 over Tyler. I'm TJ, joined by That's Admirable. And one of the things that we didn't talk about in the previous games that both of these players are already qualified for the 2019 Heartstone World Championship. 2 of the 4 players that are already qualified at this event, Viper and Bunny Hopper being the other 2.
Yeah, and you know, if we talked about everything there was to talk about between this particular match in that first game, we wouldn't have talked about the game.
We wouldn't have talked about the game at all.
Yeah, and there's different implications for it where the tiebreakers could end up panning out if qualified players already make it to top 4. With Bloodyface, Viper, and Bunny Hopper, if they make it to the top 4, that World Championship seed goes down to someone else. If Tyler makes it to the top 4, however, it takes precedent over his points-earning World Championship victory, which means that the points in Asia Pacific then go to the 2nd place earner in points in that region instead. So a lot of people cheering for Bloodyface in this one who are in the tournament, and a lot of people who aren't in the tournament cheering for Tyler in this one, in hopes that maybe Rivius can sneak a spot in that World Championship as well. It's pretty crazy to think about just how many returning championship competitors there are and the implications they have on them winning.
Yeah, we talked about it in the pre-show a little bit, but a lot of the Korean fans are rooting for Definition, of course, because he's a Korean player, and we've never had a World Championship without a Korean player. But they're also rooting for Tyler, because Tyler making it to the top 4 also means that Rivius gets a spot in the World Championship, which is another route for Korea to have a representative. And I even got word that Rivius actually set up a kind of event for watching the championship, a viewing party to cheer on Tyler. And he's even offering packs out of his own pocket for some of the Korean community that have the best cheer. So
that's awesome.
Pretty cool stuff. He's got a lot riding on this event as well, even though he's not here in person to try and get that qualification for himself. So pretty big deal. Bloodyface also, he mentioned to us beforehand that he still feels like he has a lot to prove. There's been in the past a lot of players who, after qualifying for the World Championship, kind of took it easy to prep for it. But Bloodyface said he wants to just continue proving that he's one of the best players in the world because this is his full-time thing now. He quit his job to pursue Hearthstone, and nice little chunk of that 250 grand is a pretty good bonus. But also solidifying himself in the Hearthstone history books has to be at the forefront of his mind, competing in a 2nd championship in a row.
Shout out to Rivius in chat right now, by the way. And into the matchup, I like the way that Tyler played this on turn 2, where instead of going for life tap, as is the traditional even Warlock play of tap, 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 and then play a big threat, he just wants to get the threats going right away. And in this matchup, it's important to be pressuring Bloodyface's life total. There's 2 big reasons why. Number 1, Bloodyface is playing the Xeric Cloning Gallery Priest, so he has combo turns that are on the horizon that can eliminate Tyler at a lot of different moments in the game. But number 2 is that Tyler has 2 big cards that help punish the way that Priest is going to handle board states. He's got Mojo Master Zihi, which is already in hand, sets each player's mana crystal to 5 on its battle cry, and he's also got a copy of Nerubian Unraveler, a 6 mana 5/5 that makes all spells cost 2 more. In both of those situations, if he has pressure on Bloodyface, those 2 cards have potential to end the game outright.
Absolutely. And Bloodyface is playing the very combo-oriented version of the Xeric's Cloning Gallery Priest. There's a few different versions. You see kind of the anti-aggro version, which runs double Witchwood Grizzly. But Bloodyface is running the version with 2 Shadow Essence to try and accelerate the pace at which he could complete the combo. And, offer, it can get Ziliax, which can res to heal. It can get Gilded Gargoyle, which can get you a coin, and also just put a 5/5 body on board.
Yeah.
And the biggest thing is just to put more stuff in the Resurrect pool earlier on in the game that's going to help you complete that combo later on.
Yeah, the coin doesn't seem too exciting, as he gets a great pan out here from
Mass Hysteria.
Yeah, from Mass Hysteria. And one of the the big things to really look at is the fact that the coin just unleashes so much potential in the Xeric Cloning Gallery Priest, where you just have so much extra mana with Mind Blast turns after using a Spellstone or just playing a Velen on its own or what have you. Earlier access to Psychic Scream and to Lich King, if that's what it's going to boil down to. But to me, one of the interesting things about this deck is that players have debated largely which is the right direction to go. Do you want to even play Gilded Gargoyle in your deck to start with? The fact that we're so far into this deck existing and there's not a unanimous answer across the board is very interesting to me.
Yeah, especially the Witchwood Grizzlies, because we've seen people say that, oh, I hate the Shadow Essence. You play Witchwood Grizzly, you don't play the deck, right? or some people are saying, you know what? This metagame does not suit anti-aggro cards, which overall is a solid read, and I want to complete my combo a little bit quicker and have more blow-up potential with Shadow Essence. I don't need the defense, and they play this version that Bloodyface is playing, so pretty cool.
My initial instinct was to say exactly what you said people were saying, but then you just kept saying so much that I was like, I'm not going to remember that.
Prophet Velen's on the board.
Yeah, this is definitely
solid transition.
It's kind of like, this is a weird kind of deck as well when it comes to your minions and how you actually play them. Like, so many times in the deck, you play your Prophet Velen, and if your opponent attacks it, you're like, sweet!
And if your opponent doesn't attack it, you're like,
sweet!
Sweet!
That to me is one of the reasons why this is such a powerful deck, is all of its minions are scary, regardless of whether or not they're even alive at that point.
Yeah, it's a catch-22, healing or damage.
I don't know what catch-22 really means, or like its origin. Why is it catch-22? Why isn't it catch-23?
I don't know.
Maybe it was the 20-second catch that somebody, figured out about a situation, and that was the one that stuck.
That's a great question.
Kind of feel bad for catch-18. No one even remembers that one.
I mean, catch-23 was just waiting in line for his turn.
Second Mountain Giant is problem for Bloodyface.
Well, the turn Catch-22 actually gained currency as the title of a 1961 war novel by Joseph Heller, who referred to an Air Force pilot rule whereby a pilot continuing to fly combat missions without asking for relief is regarded as insane, but is considered sane enough to continue flying if he does make such a request. A Catch-22.
Yeah, 22 was mentioned a lot of times in that.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's the 20-second catch.
Great read. Highly recommended.
Spirit Lash, then Resurrect.
Not all who wander are lost.
Lines up against the Mountain Giant quite well, and also protects Bloodyface from a single buffed Spellstone from killing off the Prophet Velen. Very solid sequencing. However, Holy Smite would have prevented the Spellstone plus the 2/3 trading, but I think with 2 Lesser Diamond Spellstones and Lich King in hand, And Bloodyface just isn't really worried about that.
Yeah,
Tyler's spending 4 mana and not getting a Lich King down.
I don't think he's ever really expecting Prophet Velen to live, and even if it does live, I don't think he's expecting that to be his main win condition. So I like his option here of holding on to the Holy Smites for that killing blow.
Yeah, a little curious if Tyler should be getting the Hooked Reavers going here, just for the, you know, the thought of Blood Reaver Gul'dan in the Resurrection pool, but you just may not have a thought of really getting Blood Reaver Gul'dan down anytime soon. Maybe a long time before he does that. But the game plan for Tyler is still pretty straightforward. Play things, try to get to a scary board position, and then punish with Mojo Master ZD.
Yeah. Arming the Dead, interesting.
Pretty risky card.
Yeah, can sometimes be used as a bootleg Xerix.
That is last week's Otto.
That's not nearly as good as the actual Xerix, but it's cheaper.
And this is really the turn to do it. It was just you got to trade over a Lich King and then develop, you know, 9 extra attack alongside of it. This is a massive turn for. I'm sorry, you get 7 extra attack alongside of it. It's just a big turn where Bloodyface now, if he wants to get, you know, Spellstone going, you know, Xerix cloning Gallery into big combo damage, we're 3 turns off again.
Yeah. He can still Eternal Servitude back a Lich King, if that's what he so chooses. Could also Eternal Servitude back a Velen and maybe clear off a few minions from the board to play the Beetle and the Shroom Brewer if he's really worried. But the thing to note about Mojo Master ZD is that it sets both players' mana crystals to 5, so Tyler also has less follow-up.
Yeah, it does technically yield a little bit of initiative to your opponent, which is why I really actually like this card, is that it requires you to set it up to be good. It's not like, you know, Lotheb of the Days of Yore, where you're like, 5 mana, 5/5, shut off your spells for a turn. Sweet.
No downside.
Yeah, the downside is, you know, your opponent may kill you the next turn with the minions they have in play. Yeah. But Mojo Master Z, he threatens that you lose tempo in the game and just never sees it back.
Yep.
Yeah, and I think Lich King is quite clearly the superior pick of the two at this moment.
The interesting thing to me is the Radiant Elemental.
Yeah, he wants it in the Resurrection pool.
I suppose
one of the Diamond Spellstones just got buffed.
Okay, yeah, that's true, because previously he only had Lich King and Velen, as we just saw with the Eternal Servitude, so he wants to get full value of that. No, that makes sense.
It also just threatens to you know, actually have an impact on the game, where Tyler is very, you know, concerned about killing off the Radiant Elemental to some degree, and so he's asked to think about, you know, where the damage is concerned. And for Bloodyface right now, I think alleviating damage is quite a priority.
Tyler has access to Spellbreaker here. He could push to 11 damage. Would not set him up for lethal if his board gets cleared in some way, because he would only have access to 7 mana next turn, which would just be enough for 1 Hellfire.
It's also scary when your opponent has the Radiant Elemental plus a Velen in the pool. You know, you're looking at Mind Blast, Holy Smite being lethal with a Spellstone.
Yeah,
at that
that's
point.
true.
There's just a lot of things going on, but, you know, if it's a buffed Spellstone, that's going to be lethal anyway. You know, Tyler's in this battle where I think he needs to figure out a way to take a risk and try to kill Bloodyface.
Oh, this is the risk. He said, well, we're going into turn 7. You don't have access to Xerix, but you do have access to Spellstone. I'm just going to hope they don't have that crazy package of spells. It would have to be... So he's got 10 damage on board, so he would need 13. So it would be like 1 Mind Blast, 1 Holy Smite with the Velen in the pool would be lethal.
The other thing, too, is that Bloodyface does have Lich King down under the Spellstone as well. And what that means is, you know, the Spellstone's going to resurrect Lich King, Radiant Elemental, and Prophet Velen in that instance. But you're at 4.
Yeah.
Bloodyface had 18 damage this turn if he had just ripped the Spellstone instead.
Yeah, if Tyler has any points of damage in hand with Hellfire, then he's dead if he just plays Spellstone, unless he uses these Holy Smites to try and clear off some of the board. He could Spellstone, Holy Smite the Spellbreaker, Holy Smite the Shroom Brewer, and trade over the 5/5. Then he's alive. And maybe that board is big enough for him to just win the game anyway. So this is the time that I like pulling the trigger on the Holy Smites. 1, it's the only thing that keeps you alive through Hellfire. And 2, 2 8/8s and a 7/7 on board,
Yeah, I mean, you're looking at, you know, potentially delivering lethal damage yourself next turn. This is the massive swing the deck tries to get to. Yeah. And a lot of times when you can disrupt your opponent from combo, that's a good thing for Tyler, but not when you're losing board this much.
And this also kind of brings me back to Bloodyface's choice on the Shadow Visions. He picked Shadow or Death, but I don't think he evaluated his full turn before he went for that Shadow Visions play. Otherwise, I think you snap pick Mind Blast in that situation, because if your opponent plays a 5 attacker or more minion, what could it be that would stop you from killing your opponent if you had picked Mind Blast instead? I don't think there's anything. Lich King can't come down. Hooked Reaver's not activated.
I wonder.
I think Tyler just got beat.
Yeah.
You know, I think Bloodyface is looking at it and going, you know what? If I get to another turn, I'm probably pretty good to go anyway.
Yeah.
And so to me, this was like, you know, account for some sort of weird Spellstone Defile play. I don't think there was a way for him to account for all the Shadow Visions scenarios in that one. Tyler forced to life tap with Rope burning down. There's just no option that gets this job done.
All right, so he's going to go up to 25.
Yikes.
15. He would
Tyler's
have had lethal if he picked the Mind Blast.
Tyler's very thoroughly dead.
Yeah.
There's not a card in the deck that comes back from this scenario. You know, even Warlock, in the same way that the Paladin deck was playing earlier, once it loses board outside of Defile and Hellfire, there's no way you're coming back.
Yeah.
And Bloodyface he was able to get to big minions safely.
Wait, he needs to heal up. That's the big thing here because of double Hellfire. That's the only thing he loses to is double Hellfire.
And so the Spellstone first gives him access to the double-double. And so it goes to 8 healing off the hero power. And that's enough.
Full animal style.
Yeah. That style.
Bloodyface takes game number 2. Tyler on the back foot. And we may be on a road to starting off day 1 with 3 sweeps.
It's pretty crazy to look at, but the third deck for Tyler, for Bloodyface here, you know, as has been talked about in the other matchups, it's the one I'm concerned with. I think Quest Rogue has some pretty questionable matchups here versus what Tyler has brought. So that's the big question mark point. Can Bloodyface pilot it to a victory versus the even Warlock, the Xeric Cloning Gallery Priest of Tyler's, and the even Paladin that we saw him on in Game 1?
Yeah, they're just kind of, it's a mixture of pretty aggressive decks with a mixture of that Xeric's Cloning Gallery Priest, which is a combo deck that just gets its combo, quote-unquote, for Quest Rogue off much quicker. So yeah, 3 tough matchups across the board. And we even saw what Noblord struggled with his Quest Rogue earlier on. It was a good call for the overall metagame because there's a lot of slow decks, but they're also combo decks that faster and finish their combos faster in order to kill you. So I think it's going to be a deck that we see struggling a lot.
It definitely could be, but it's important to note that Tyler's lineup's not nearly as aggressive as Viper's is as well.
Or Bunny Hoppers, which is one of the most aggressive. So definitely some interesting things to look forward to in the rest of this series. But for now, we're going to have to take a quick break. When we come back, maybe the conclusion of Bloodyface versus Tyler. Tune in right after this. Hello, everybody. Welcome back to the HCT Winter Championship. You saw during the break a little clip from Talkstone where Dan and I discussed the very unfortunate circumstances that Tyler had to go through before the playoffs with his father passing away, decided to make the trip to playoffs despite it because his father had always wanted him to follow his dream of playing Heartstone professionally and at the highest level. And, you know, you have to commend Tyler for his perseverance in the face of the worst odds possible.
Yeah. I just, you know, I ain't got the words for it. Yeah. And it's tough, but, you know, he's persevered through it. And to me, that's like really such a big statement about it. As Dan, you know, we saw Dan talking about in that piece. It takes a lot of heart to come into a tournament and do that. And I think he has done it fantastically. And I think that the way that he has spoken about it and the way that he's using it as a point of encouragement for others as well has just been so touching. And honestly, it's inspiring to see.
And now Tyler competing in the Winter Championship, second championship appearance this year, has had an incredible year for Heartstone after making the move to Vietnam after competing in Europe from the Netherlands for some time, and now has become effectively one of the faces of Asia Pacific competitive Hearthstone.
Oh yeah,
and already at the World Championship because of his points leader position, as we've talked about. So kind of playing for that glory, and also playing for Rivius, as we also talked about. But you always want to see Tyler succeed. But on the other hand, Bloodyface, exceptional Hearthstone player, one of the best breakout performances we've ever seen from a Hearthstone competitor. And currently he's sitting up 2-0 in the series with just Questrogue remaining.
Yeah, and you mentioned it, prior to this, with Questrogue being one of these slower combo decks, I guess is a good way to put it. I think it definitely can get underway and put a lot of pressure on Tyler, but that is going to be somewhat dependent on draws here. And when Tyler opens up with 2 Radiant Elementals here and starts chipping away, this is a pretty big deal for Bloodyface, where this was, I think, the one thing he did not want to see Tyler do was open up with Coin Radiant into Radiant.
Yeah.
Now that that's the case, Bloodyface has to start playing this deck a way you do in aggressive matchups, where you have to fight for board position and then hope that you can find a way to complete your quest later on. It's much more difficult in the face of pressure, and Tyler's deck isn't going to continue to compound this issue, but at some point it'll get a bit explosive, and it will always threaten to have Mind Blasts to be able to deliver damage.
Yeah, the big thing about this start is that it delays Bloodyface's ability to complete the combo, because Bloodyface, as you mentioned, has to worry about this. And that means that even if this board gets stopped now or in a few turns, it meant that Bloodyface couldn't play the hand the way he wanted to complete his quest as quick as possible, which gives Tyler more time to get that Xerx's Cloning Gallery online to finish the game with those big Mind Blast bursts. And even once Rogue completes his quest, because of the change in the identity of the deck, there's less chargers. There's 1 Stone Tusk Boar alongside the 2 South Sea deckhands. So you do just have kind of less burst potential from hand, which can be a big deal as we get to those later phases of the game where you're playing against a combo deck that could kill you from 30 at any point in time.
Yeah. There are some big differences between Bloodyface's version of the Cloning Gallery Priest and Tyler's as well. One of the main ones I'm looking at is that Shadow Reaper Anduin in hand for Tyler. There is no Lich King included in the list, and he's gone much more towards that combo-oriented style of victory, where he also has a copy of Vivid Nightmare to make a duplicate of either a Malagos or a Prophet Velen, so that you once again get the double-double on your bonus damage. That is a very big difference in the lists, where Lich King might have outright won Bloodyface the previous game.
Yeah.
Would Shadow Reaper Anduin have come even close to doing the same thing in that matchup?
It's really hard to tell.
But in this matchup, would you rather have Lich King or would you rather have Shadow Reaper Anduin? And honestly, I think I'd rather have Shadow Reaper Anduin.
Yeah, even though there's no 5-attack minions for you to kill at all.
Yeah.
It just allows you to have that recurring pressure to try and get those last pieces of damage in without having to rely on any sort of combo, right? You don't have to have Xerx. You can weave in those Shadow Reaper Anduin hero powers with Mind Blast and Holy Smites in order to piece together damage over a few turns.
Yeah, it's the guaranteed extended reach you get from Anduin versus the sometimes reach that you get from the Lich King.
Yep. But again, like you mentioned, Vivid Nightmare in place of kind of a Shadowward Pain, which is what Bloodyface opted to put in his deck, so a little bit more removal options. Another Shadow Vision's picked up. Well, right now,
I mean, Smite is damage.
Yeah, but the thing about it is, Xerx's Cloning Gallery right now, since he's played double Radiant, will summon all the things he needs for combo, except for reduction on his spells.
Yeah.
Which means that he won't have the ability. He could play Xerx's Cloning Gallery on turn 10 and get 1 Holy Smite.
Yeah.
Which is still 12 damage. 14 damage.
I was like,
my bad.
Doing this right?
Yeah. 14 damage.
7 times 2, 12. TJ math.
Yeah, math was never my strong suit. That's why I decided to become a caster.
Well,
where
I was
math
thinking
is a critical part of my job.
So you went on to the combo turns. I was just thinking about the Smite to do this, where Tyler just, again, he wants to keep chipping away.
Okay.
But we see the Ziliax in Bloodyface's hand, which is, I think partially the reason that you ended up dismissing that as a thought. But, that play right there, it just shows you how aggressive Tyler wants to be in this matchup. He knows that he's under the gun where the damage is concerned, and Ziliax, probably one of the last things he wanted to see this turn. And the second Elven Minstrel probably going to be the other thing that he doesn't want to see on next turn. So I think Bloodyface, even though his hand is, you know, like one of the starter decks that you get when you first start playing Hearthstone, I think that's going to quickly compound as this, you know, Tyler's going to have a few turns of doing nothing here.
I hope you like my invention.
Which is just the risk that you have to take. But like I said earlier, it was about Tyler delaying how Bloodyface could play his hand, delaying the completion of the quest. And now that Bloodyface sees a dead turn, now he can start drawing some cards, looking at his hand and saying, now how can I complete the quest as efficiently as possible? And then how can I win the game from there? This is just a whole lot of nothing.
Right. I mean, this is a lot of what the Cloning Gallery Priest deck will sometimes do as well. You know, I don't think Tyler's necessarily just like in an outright losing position in this spot. There's a lot of things that can change and a lot of things that can happen. And it's a deck that really lives and dies with a lot of turns like this. It's one of the reasons why I'm so uncomfortable playing the deck, is I'm so used to playing things when I play Hearthstone. Like if I'm not using my cards, I feel like I'm losing. Right now, I don't necessarily feel like Tyler's losing until that Vanish gets drawn. Now I feel like Tyler's losing.
Yeah. The big thing about it is if he just did nothing for 9 turns and didn't draw any of his minions, he would just win. That's just how Xeric's Cloning Gallery Priest works.
But the Radiants have already been drawn.
But the Radiants have already been drawn, so now the combo is offline for Tyler on turn 9. So what he has to do is survive long enough to pick up Spellstone and then hope that he reses the good stuff, because he's not going to win a War of Attrition, because Quest Rogue is the absolute best as winning a War of Attrition because of the fact that they have Lab Recruiter. They have a source of infinite resources. Now he just did use his Lab Recruiter.
Yes, and he uses a Novice Engineer because I think Bloodyface is understanding that he doesn't need to go infinite resources with this deck. You know, one of the main points of defense for Tyler in terms of wide board states is going to be Psychic Scream. That's going to add cards to your deck. So when Psychic Scream is adding cards to your deck, what ends up happening is you naturally win the Fatigue War against your opponent. That's really the only downside of Psychic Scream that's out there.
Yeah, there's no way this matchup is going to that Fatigue state, which, if it did, he would hold on to Lab Recruiter for Valera, and Lab Recruiter his own Lab Recruiter to have that infinite chain of resources.
A lot of long-term shenanigans.
A lot of long-term shenanigans, only really relevant in, like, Odd Warrior matchups, potentially.
Well, it's relevant in some of the mirror matchups as well.
Yeah, mirror matchups as well. When if you both are just fighting evenly, complete the quest around the same time.
I remember
pulls far ahead
when Lab Recruiter first got introduced into this deck as a way to do that, continue to shuffle minions back in your deck. There was a brilliant quote from Naviute that I heard, which he said, "Look, playing Lab Recruiter might be an idiotic move, but if it's going to go in Quest Rogue and there's going to be idiots playing Lab Recruiter, you now have to play Lab Recruiter because those idiots are going to beat you if you don't." I was like, "Wow, that's really smart."
So when everybody's an idiot, nobody's an idiot.
Correct. Then it's just right. That's why TJ and I are both idiots.
Because then neither of us are idiots.
Makes sense if you don't think about it.
Well, Bloodyface looked like he wanted to complete the quest with Glacial Shard. He bounced that back out of the minions that he had available to him on board. Put on a lot of pressure. He played a lot of minions last turn, trying to force out the removal from Tyler. But now kind of back to the drawing board, still a ways away from the quest, and then still a ways away from killing Tyler.
Yeah, if Bloodyface wanted to get the quest underway, which I'm guessing he does, it's Glacial Shard, Vanish, and then the next 2 Glacial Shards will complete the quest from that point. The thing about it is Vanish is a very important card a lot of times, but if you have quest complete, I think the Vanish is much less necessary, because that means you can just use your minions to simulate that style where you just kind of pick off all your opponent's stuff. You do have to have board for that to work, but not really much of a problem when all your minions become 4/4s, when they're usually like 1/1s and 2/1s.
I wonder.
So Tyler just has a bunch of pieces of stuff that he would like to do, but not all the pieces of stuff that he would like to do. Yes, it's Eric's, but not enough impactful minions in the deck to make that crazy combo happen. Also no Spellstone. He's got Shadow Reaper Anduin, but not enough burst in hand to be able to end the game over a few turns.
It's time to go Shadow Reaper Anduin. Is what it's time for. I don't think Tyler's has a line in this game that's really going to get him there. Like, maybe there's something weird with like Eternal Servitude to set up a Cloning Gallery to do something, but he just drew the Malagos. So that's one of the ones you don't want to draw if you're setting up a burst combo with Xeric's Cloning Gallery. However, it's looking like Tyler does have that plan in mind. So I'm quite interested in this and to see where this ends up going, because this is a play that certainly raises an eyebrow from Bloodyface, where you see something like this and you go, okay, what the heck is going on? And so it's complete quest, and then kill this Radiant Elemental.
Yeah. Which Tyler was just kind of hoping that there was no charge or rusher in the hand for him to be able to kill that off, which I like that play because let's say that Radiant Elemental lives. Then he can play Xeric's next turn and have access to Mind Blast plus Holy Smite, which still wouldn't be lethal damage.
Yeah. This was a strange play to me, honestly, from Tyler's position. I'm not quite sure what the major benefit of having that happen was. To me, it looks like he just threw away an Eternal Servitude.
Yeah, but maybe he thinks that Eternal Servitude's not going to really be able to win in the game in the long run. That's what that's very possible. That's where my head's at. He said,
you don't get the Anduin down, though. I mean,
yeah,
when is that Anduin coming down
also,
now?
maybe he thinks that he's not really willing to give up his heal, because Spirit Lash currently
that's a true story.
Not guaranteed to be a big heal, and he needs more time to find pieces. Ooh, prep.
Yeah, not the greatest at this stage, I'd say. There's only one Vanish left in the deck, so I think Preparation is actually probably the weakest hit left in Bloodyface's deck. Like, I think he'd rather see Valera than Preparation at this point. It's like, the second Valera's not going to do anything, but it's like, what is the second Preparation going to do? There's literally one spell left in the deck, and it's Vanish. I'm sorry, there's Fan of Knives as well, in case he really needs to cycle those.
Fan of Knives, yeah. Is this coin going to be impactful from the Gilded Gargoyle?
Definitely is.
But is it?
Yeah, that allows your opponent to have an 11-mana turn.
Yeah, but is 11 mana... Is an 11-mana turn even what can win Tyler the game in this stage?
Well, I want to introduce you to my good friend Malagos Spirit Lash.
Ah, yes. I, too, have met
Perhaps
Malagos
you've forgotten
Spirit Lash.
that Malagos gives you +5 spell damage.
Ah, yes, I did. I thought Malagos was just a 4/12 dragon.
Also introduces you to my good friend, let's get a lot of random Lyra spells.
Well, it would only be one random Lyra spell.
Coin?
I guess 2 random Lyra spells. Maybe 3.
2 feels like a lot here. Spellstone is one of the random Lyra spells.
Okay, and he gets another coin because he traded in the Gilded Gargoyle or has another Gilded Gargoyle in his deck, which is pulled out by the Xeric's Cloning Gallery.
Well, that's a big deal. Was Mass Hysteria the other one?
It was.
Are you sure that Lyra's not drawing cards from the deck right now?
As sure as I am that that hatchet was still there in game 1.
I mean, this is a whole new game now.
Yeah, back up to 30 Spellstone now with, what was it, 3 Radiant Elementals in the pool?
3 Radiants, 2 Gargoyles, Lyra, Velen, Ziliax.
That's pretty good. Still needs to beef up that Spellstone, though. But
Spellstone does say different minions, though. You cannot resurrect the same minion twice.
But with more minions in the pool, like Radiant, it nods. It has a nod towards that. Increases the percentage chance.
But is that finally confirmed? That's actually been a question I've had for a long time.
Nobody could ever possibly confirm that. It's impossible to confirm.
Couldn't the developer of the game confirm or deny that?
Technically.
Okay.
But I don't think anybody's ever
It's like with
said
Shadow
it.
Visions in Discovery. I'm
just
curious if, like, if you have 2 Psychic Screams and 1 Mind Blast,
that it's going to give you a Psychic Scream more often.
I don't know.
That's
if
not
true
confirmed
or not.
either.
I know. That's what I'm saying. I want that confirmed.
My world is shattered right now. But Tyler does have Psychic Scream plus Mass Hysteria to defend against this push. And
it's necessary to defend against it as well.
Another Spellstone. So he's got 2 potential Spellstones to get the ball rolling. How much damage can Bloodyface piece together? He's got Prep Vanish, but also has Stone Tusk Force Southsea deckhand.
It's 17 and then 4 more from the Shadow Step. So 21 exactly. So, you know, looking back to the Shadow Reaper Anduin, if Tyler had not been weaving in these heals every turn, he'd be in a pretty disastrous spot.
Yeah.
The question that Tyler, I think, is willing to risk right now is the Mass Hysteria, where there is one Mass Hysteria pan out that works perfectly, and if it's the Wax Elemental is in the first attack iteration.
That's true. If the Glacier starts to attack each other, Tyler's dead.
Yes, but you know,
if he's Psychic Summon heals, he's alive.
I think he's sometimes still willing to have the Wax Elemental go wrong in that scenario though, because what's the likelihood that Bloodyface actually delivers a lethal blow the following turn?
Yeah, he would have to have
Chargers and Shadow Step,
which he only has 2 Chargers left since he used his South Sea Deckhand early on in the game. So he would have to have this exact hand, which is a 5-card combo.
I think it's wise to do it this way.
Is that second Shadow Step?
I think it was. Oh boy.
All right, that's lethal.
Well, yeah. Bloodyface spots these really quick. He's always thinking about this during his opponent's turn. And
okay, 21 damage, another Shadow Step.
I've talked to him about the game, and he just always constantly thinking, what's my draw for lethal? Do I have a draw for lethal? What is it? I need to know and start to plan that out. Insane draw from Bloodyface. 3-0 in this set, and our third 3-0 of the day.
This is as fast as we could possibly churn through Heartstone matches.
We've been casting these quick.
Yeah, and you can see Bloodyface taking off the headset. I do not think Tyler expected to die there. That had to be that exact combo of cards. No 2-ofs of any of those left in the deck. Crazy finish with Tyler basically on the verge of victory himself with that buffed up Spellstone potentially.
Yeah.
Depending on what it res, but at the end of the day, Bloodyface going to take that victory, continuing his kind of streak of domination over the course of the past 2 championships and the past 2 playoffs.
Yes, and this is one of the reasons that I consider Bloodyface, up there as in an argument for the best in the world right now.
Yeah.
Is this has now been 2 times that this has been happening where it's just like strong technical play, great recognition. He's got a lineup that's built a little bit differently than everybody else's, and it continues to pay off in success. I look at Tyler's lineup in this one in the same way that I feared for Bloodyface's Quest Rogue. I was a bit uneasy about the Xerix Cloning Gallery Priest from Tyler's side. So if he had gotten that particular game through, I think that then you're looking at a set where it's like, I'm a little bit worried for Bloodyface. But with that Xerix Cloning Gallery Priest there still, I think that Tyler had an advantage until it got to game 3 this way it did.
Yeah. But Tyler still got some fight left in him. It is a double elimination group, so he'll be seeing him later on in the week. But another person who we'll be seeing in just a few seconds is Bloodyface, who's standing by with an interview with Raven.
Going up against Faeli, one of Europe's rising stars. Now, we heard a little bit about the players themselves. Do you have anything that you'd like to share on top of what the players already said in their piece here?
Well, as you mentioned, Faeli is a player who has kind of flown just a little bit under the radar for a very long time now. He's had a ton of close calls and qualification for championships previously. I think he's had, I believe it was prior to this, like 2 other top 16 finishes at playoffs where he just missed. And, he was had just really been on the cusp of success and is looking for a real breakout performance here.
Yeah, and we're going to see if his lineup can really get through the hump here. He's got Cube Warlock, which is something that I'm personally a big fan of. I love Cube Warlock. Death Rattle Hunter. He's got the Control Priest, which got banned, and Togwoggle Druid. Meanwhile, Jing bringing a Tempo Rogue, Zoo Warlock, even Paladin Midrange Hunter. Fairly aggressive lineup coming out from our Chinese player.
Yeah, he's the only player in the entire tournament to be playing this Zoo Warlock deck that he has brought here. And it's a particularly unusual one. It's not like the Heal Zoo that a lot of people have become kind of familiar with. It's a Grim Rally Zoo deck. It even includes Explodinator, which gives you, that many more minions that create multiple bodies, and also just make good use of your Void Rippers for extra damage, your Grim Rallies for extra damage. Just more ways to force Fungal Mantle value on the turn 5.
Yeah, and meanwhile, just looking at how Tempo Rogue really functions too. I mean, it's a Tempo Rogue without Prince Kelseth, for example. I mean, a lot of people might look at it as is it a Tempo Rogue? Is it more that Miyoko Rogue aspect? I mean, I think what's important is that it just wants to get over the hump and pressure the slow decks. I don't even think the nomenclature matters nearly as much.
Yeah, so he is going to be very aggressive and looking to take advantage of some of these slower combo-oriented decks. And Faeli here, this is the Q block deck that for a while was the absolute terror of Hearthstone, but after the nerfs to Dark Pact and the Possessed Lackey is no longer quite as threatening. Still has the potential for some really explosive starts, however.
Yep, so Cube Warlock is definitely one of those decks that can struggle against aggressive strategies because it does not heal and get those Void Lords nearly as quickly. And they've kind of doubled down on some of the combo routes of it. And so Faeli, we'll see if he's able to withstand this pressure. And I think this is a really good litmus test, really, to see whether or not this Zoo Warlock has that pressure capability. But when you have an opening hand like that, I think it doesn't really matter how you decorate the rest of the second half of your deck.
It is less relevant indeed. This is a very powerful opening from Jing with the Flame Imp into Keleseth. We see on the side of the screen there some of the more unusual choices in his deck that we mentioned earlier. Grim Rally, Explodinator, and Fungalmancer, really giving that extra push, that extra oomph. Fungalmancer obviously not an unusual inclusion, but works particularly well with Explodinator to set up for it, since it gives you 3 bodies that your opponent has to remove to keep you from getting the buffs.
Yeah, and without things like Hellfire, Faeli's going to be very dependent on this Doomsayer to really activate, and it's just not going to because of the ability for Jing to trade up here.
Well, the Defile in Faeli's hand is also quite powerful. Faeli could play the Doomsayer here, and if Jing ends up using the Abusive Sergeant to kill the Doomsayer, for instance, that does set up his Defile in the following turn. However, that also gives Jing the possibility of just drawing a Void Ripper, which would be the absolute best card in his deck at this point. Does not find it, and he knows, that Defile has to be something that he has in mind. So does he want to spend 7 damage here on the Doomsayer and potentially get defiled by playing a Abusive Sergeant this turn?
Yeah, it's fair. I mean, he has even ways to take it a little bit slower too if he wants to, but I think Key Warlock is one of those decks where you don't want to give it any breathing room whatsoever. If you give Faeli the ability to life tap, for example, that might give him the flexibility to play Mountain Giant on the following turns.
It's true.
So you have to be, in my opinion, a little bit more aggressive and force your opponent to defile early on. That being said, I can totally understand if Jing wants to take it a little bit slower and maybe even draw first before he takes an actual before he takes an action.
Yeah, so we see definitely taking his time with this turn, and yeah, he will go ahead and life tap first. Finds Grim Rally. All right, and he is going to pick off this Doomsayer, but that does open up the door for Faeli to answer with Defile. Ooh, and he actually wouldn't have even needed the help because he did draw a Kobold Librarian of his own. So he could Defile into a Kobold Librarian this turn if he so chooses to get a little bit board presence himself, as well as clear the entire board for Jing as well.
I wonder.
There's also the argument that, this is the only board clear that Faeli has access to. It potentially could behoove him to just sort of sit back and try and save the Defile and force it on Jing's next turn, but this is a lot of damage he can take.
Yeah, I kind of like the Defile here, just because, again, Cube Warlock doesn't have that healing flexibility, and more importantly, just stop their momentum from being able to snowball. Like, Zoo Warlock with things like Grim Rally are especially snowballing compared to other variants. So I think reducing that minion board state is really important for Faeli here.
Yeah, I think from Jing's perspective, you could just play all 4 minions. Your opponent just defiled. You obviously could end up getting Hellfired next turn too, but if your opponent has all the answers to your early game board, all right, they have it. There's not much you can do. You don't have the flexibility of trying to play this in particularly different ways. Jing's deck only even has the Leroy and Soulfires for burst. There's no Doom Guard. There's no like big minion that can get repeated damage in. He needs to get these small minions down to deal damage. So I think that he really kind of just has to take the risk that Faeli has the answer. All right, Firefly is the draw here. So that is a slightly better minion for him to potentially play than a Serenite Taskmaster. If it does get cleared off, there's at least not a taunt on the board for his opponent.
Yeah, I think this is pretty straightforward here from Jing. Just keep building the pressure, don't relent.
Just put those minions on the board.
Right.
Hope they don't get killed. That's your plan.
Right, and I think this...
Oh!
That is a big-time draw.
And like we were just saying, hope they don't have it. Well, Faeli has it. Doomsayer, Defile, and now Hellfire. Give him the tools to pick apart all of the early game from Jing here. And, to his credit, Jing does still have a deck full of Keleseth minions. He can still pick up, powerful draws of, say, the... he does have the Solarium. I was just thinking of what are the best things he could pick up here, and finding that could give him just a little bit more resource generation to try and punch through Faeli's AoE. There's even just kind of a one-turn window that Faeli has for this Hellfire, because otherwise you Grim Rally and you can get some of your, hey, there it is, Solarium.
How are you doing this, Brian Gilbert?
I really, I say, hey, they really need to get rid of Genenbaku. They get rid of Genenbaku. He really needs to draw Solarium. He draws Solarium. I am just a prophet, okay? You want some lottery numbers?
I will, please tell me, and give me some stock market advice as well.
I got to keep that to myself.
This is where we find out that you're just a Time Lord, straight up. Somehow Gilbert's found the way to warp time-space continuum.
Oh, Soulfire. All right.
Yeah, not really the
really
best
what he wants to
scenario.
draw. So what frankly, Jing's deck here is very tilted toward one-cost minions. And I think that perhaps his thought process there with the Solarium is, he already has a couple of cheap plays. He can life tap. And if he, say he Solariums and hits like Explodinator and 2 1-drops, well, he can't really play very much of that. So life tapping gives him close to the draw of the the Solarium in terms of the overall resource generation, because he's not trading anything for anything else.
Yeah, that makes sense. And then from Faeli's perspective, he has an opportunity just to be a little bit more defensive with the Ziliax. And he even gets a little taunt minion to boot.
I am free. There's Explodinator.
Yeah, Explodinator
Get
works
some
really well with the
bombs.
Grim Rally.
It does. It's just like a powerful card if you're able to get your opponent low. But right now, Faeli is at 25 with a Ziliax in play, with 2 Dark Packs in hand. This is definitely a very precarious situation for Jing. He does not have much time before Void Lord is online, given that Faeli has the coin as well. So he really needs to manage to assemble a board that can stick and get damage in repeatedly, because, like we said, this deck does not have much burst.
Well, Grim Rally does end up buffing the Flame Elemental to a attack that he can trade into the Ziliax if he doesn't want to Soulfire. Soulfire in here does ditch the Solarium.
You cannot afford to Soulfire here, I think. I just think that you need the resource generation of the Solarium here. Yeah, and Jing agrees.
Yeah, Life Tap's a great card, but with so many 1-mana minions, most likely Solarium can play everything that gets drawn next to it.
And there's Gul'dan. So the clock was basically already on with Void Lord. Once Void Lord comes out, this deck is not really making it through. There's a single copy of Spellbreaker in Jing's deck once the giant 3/9 taunt comes down. And Faeli is actually kind of in an interesting position, because he's got this Doomguard. It's like, okay, I can play this Doomguard and try and take control of the board, but if I discard Gul'dan, if I discard this Void Lord, maybe I actually end up in a position where I don't find those resources to continue to stabilize this game.
Yeah. So I guess from Faeli's perspective, he can go for a greedier play, because he does have 26 life, and Jing has kind of had weak developments over the past couple of turns. So if he chooses to life tap and, say, play the Spirit Singer Umbra, that gives him a lot more upside compared to just playing the Doomguard.
He's going for it.
The Doomguard immediately, though, does have better upside to just control the state of the board.
That's the thing, is this is a calculated risk from Faeli. He's thinking, okay, I'm in a position where I just want to take control of the board and prevent you from developing enough. Ooh, Fungalmancer would have been great if that had remained on the board. If he was able to buff that bomb, then that would have been 7 to the face with that Explodinator.
Right, exactly. And so it just takes away that ability for Jing to really capitalize on that. Solarium can still pretty much play anything that he draws. Like so.
Yeah, he can play out that entire hand, with the exception of the Fungalmancer. If he probably wants to hold on to Fungalmancer, maybe just play the 3 cards drawn and the 1/2 from the Firefly. Because the coin's gone, so there's at least a little bit more time before he needs to worry about Void Lord. He's already seen a Defile, he's already seen a Hellfire, so just trying to build up a big board that he can then Fungalmancer and push damage to the face is pretty valuable.
Yeah, I think there's not too much to think about here. I would love for Jing to get even more cards in the hand, but this is looking like it's better off if he just power loads the board with the current hand that he has at the moment.
You don't really have the luxury of trying to play like around removal again. If there's, for instance, there is actually no copy of Godfrey in Faeli's deck, which is got to be reassuring for Jing at least.
I was just realizing that there's also just another defile opportunity if it picked up, because it'd be pretty easy to set up a 1-2-3-4 scenario. Maybe in that case you don't want to play the 1-2 Flame Elemental. But those are
no. If you attack into the Tar Creeper, you get a 1.
Oh
and
yeah,
2 anyway.
2 anyways. Yeah, you're right. Well, Faeli's the best defensive play here is using the Spellbreaker onto most likely would be a Tar Creeper and pick up an easy trade.
I wonder.
It does give you a. It takes a lot of damage off the board. I mean, you could trade into the Explodator if you want. You could trade into the Serenite, eat the Serenite, and get yourself a taunt as well.
Yeah, I like taunt just because it helps give you a little bit of that buffer room and it doesn't get picked off immediately.
There's the Spellbreaker for Jing here, which could allow him to push damage now, but that ends up being pretty costly in the long term because it's his only Spellbreaker.
Right, and I think it's just better against the Void Lord to hold on to it. So then that gives Jing the ability to life tap and play Fungal Mancer. He probably would want to trade the Doomguard off to prevent any cube finishing.
Yeah, cube has to be something on your mind here. Exactly how you position your Fungal Mancer here is also a little bit interesting. Do you end up do you Fungal Mancer say between Explodinator and Tar Creeper, and then use that's interesting.
Void Ripper.
Void Ripper kills the. It actually gives your opponent a 3/5, which is harder for you to kill. Though you have a 5/1. Actually, that's actually kind of interesting. 14, immediately 18. Kills that. And you can push for 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 18. Yeah, you're actually very close to lethal just going face, but I think you have to get rid of the Doomguard.
Yeah, getting rid of the Doomguard I think is priority number 1 for sure, and then pushing and then forcing your opponent to deal with the board. Because this is still a very fearsome board, It's showing the power of Kel'Seth. Which I don't think many people need a reminder of how good it was.
There's a Doomguard, so if he had not killed, or rather there's a cube, if you not killed the Doomguard, that would have been cube packed to eat a lot of his board here.
Faeli's in a tough spot.
Yeah,
this was the life tap.
This was looking so good for the Czech player for quite a while here, but now he is in a really awkward situation. If he had that coin that got discarded to the Doomguard, it would be Void Lord time. And that would be, in this particular instance, Spellbreaker kill you. But it would at least feel more comfortable that, I have no play whatsoever this turn, that it's actually effectively defensive.
I feel like Faeli might have to life tap into a Hellfire. That's kind of how the situation has presented itself. I don't really see any good defensive plays outside of it because he is barely alive on board.
He can theoretically attack the 2/3 and Dark Pact. Yeah. Okay. This takes the most damage off the board. He doesn't die to just Soulfire. He does to that though.
Yeah.
Right. It's 10, 11, 12, 13, 14.
I mean, he also would have died to just the Void Ripper and the Soulfire flip too, right?
Yes. But just in terms of what he's calculating.
One card, instead of the 1 card.
Right. Instead of, if he has Soulfire, I'm dead. Now it's, okay, you have anything that does additional damage and a Soulfire, I'm dead. And Jing, despite the Doomsayer, Defile, and Hellfire, is able to pick up the game with his Zoo Warlock deck.
And Ziliax, too.
Yeah, that was so many of the powerful defensive tools that Faeli's deck has at disposal. Came out very early, but so did Kel'Seth. And Jing takes that 1-0 lead in the series.
Yeah, both decks started off very hot with really pretty good draws. I think Faeli kind of fizzled out in the mid-game, though, and you mentioned the Solarium and how important that card was, and it was super valuable to really load up the power of the board and pressure just enough to get over the hump very quickly. Because if that Void Lord was able to get going, I mean, if he was able to even save coin for Void Lord, coin, Dark Pact into Save Blooded for Gul'dan, that game is done and dusted.
And yeah, if Jing was only drawing a single card a turn there, or even the 2 with life tap and having to spend the mana, he would have been in a position he couldn't quite get enough threat on board, and Faeli may have had the time to take control.
All right, well, that's just game 1 in this best of 5. We'll find out what happens when we return to the Winter Championship. We've not dropped a game so far in the Winter Championship, as earlier today, we got to see LFyueying from China go 3-0 and advance to the winner's match. And, you know, China's always been a slow starter. It's always felt like they had to climb through the loser's bracket in order to make any deep runs. Not the case so far, and I think Jing's most questionable deck is already through.
It was the most unusual deck for sure. I think it's one of the decks that actually is you know, kind of a sleeper. No one was really expecting to see this deck in this tournament, and you know, we saw just the power of it in that game, even against a opponent who had many early answers. It was able to just punch through and get that victory.
Yeah, I think that you know, no one really anticipated the Zoo Warlock as an aggressive option, but Explodinator ended up playing a pretty big role, you know, being able to get that early game bomb damage and helping him get across the board, or across that hump, but at the same time having things like Keleseth and Flame Imps really is a nice addition as well. The rest of Jing's decks are more standard, still a little bit unusual stuff. I mean, Tempo Rogue is not as common as, say, you know, all the other rogues that you might see in this tournament. And then we're going to go to Even Paladin as well. Even Paladin seems to be pretty straightforward. Does have that Mojo Master Zihi, which I like a lot. And then Faeli, he's bringing a Death Rattle Hunter, and he's ready to return the Keleseth favor, if you will.
Yeah, one good Keleseth deserves another, as Faeli has that in his opening hand. The Flanking Strike, potentially something he's going to be looking to hold on to as well to help answer early minions. I would love to find a Candle Shot, some other early game to help deal with the hero powers from the Even Paladin early on.
Yeah, I guess Prince Keleseth and Flanking Strike are definitely the cards to think about. Katharina is one of the best cards in the entire deck. However, it is very slow, and if it was a matchup, say, against like Priest, that they could maybe consider it, or Warrior. Against an Even Paladin that's much quicker, you might not have the time to play that.
Yeah, it's definitely, you know, despite being one of the best cards in your deck, it's not one of the cards you want in your opening hand in this matchup, because what you need is time. This is a matchup where the Hunter deck, specifically Death Rattle Hunter deck, typically has inevitability. If the game goes very long, you have more powerful long game cards thanks to, you know, Cube Playdead and such, while the Even Paladin deck is the deck that's looking to close out the game quickly.
I think Faeli, you know, just taking his time to breathe and make sure playing out his turns. I don't think there's an incredible need for him to point out this Prince Keleseth, given that he doesn't have any other 2-mana plays possible in his deck. So just taking a second to think about what he wants to do and how he wants to react. But for the most part, pretty straightforward turn there.
Yeah, and Jing here, the Berserker has got to look pretty good because it does help eat your opponent's Keleseth if it does come down.
Yep. Yeah, I like the Amani Berserker. I think the 2 attack from the Prince Keleseth is very threatening otherwise. Plus, your opponent didn't take the time to play the Candle Shot, so your Amani Berserker is likelier to survive after trading into a 2-3 Keleseth.
Move quickly. It's time for a little blood.
Got a original classic basic set troll theme. Coming back for the Gurubashi Arena Rastakan's Rumble. And yeah, Faeli is going to take his time and then play Keleseth.
Yeah, seems like he's just pacing his play. I think he's just slowing down, making sure that he doesn't rush into things. Again, fairly straightforward turn. Keleseth's highest win rate is on 2. There's just no other time to really play it if that's what you put in your deck. So now Jing has the ability to discover a secret, which can be very nice to protect his Amani Berserker, either through the Redemption or through the Auto Defense Matrix. Redemption actually works very nicely with Amani Berserker.
Right. Yeah, it finds Redemption, and yeah, I suspect that will be what he's looking to pick up, because you know, Faeli will potentially want to kill that Berserker as quickly as possible, because 5 is a lot of damage. It also protects it from, say, Coin Flanking Strike, rather than Noble Sacrifice, which would only protect it from, for instance, a Candle Shot pickup.
Right. Redemption is a little bit less flexible, though, because of the Silverhand Recruit that also exists on the other side. However, it's like you said, Faeli doesn't have many good ways to deal with it, because it doesn't run things like Unleash the Hounds, for example.
Move quickly.
like the redemption. Again, shut down what Faeli can do in response to this.
It's also worth noting these players do have knowledge of each other's deck lists entirely, so Jing is aware there is a mind control tech in Faeli's deck, so the redemption is that much favored over potentially just using his hero power that turn and having the disaster scenario of your opponent stealing your Berserker.
Yeah, that makes sense too. So I wonder if, from Faeli's point of view, that he wants to take it even a little bit slower and not play that flanking strike. Yeah, I think that having the coin available for him to, say, coin out Deathstalker Rexar can be pretty powerful, and also just increase the flexibility of his plays moving forward. Double Spellbreaker, kind of giving Jing a sign, you know? It's like, you know what? Maybe you can just start pushing aggressively here. I don't really know if I like any other play besides the Spellbreaker nearly as much. Just because he's coming up on an odd cost turn the following.
Right.
On the following, so it'd be much easier to fit in like a Swamp Ooze in the following turns.
Yeah, and you can Spellbreaker and just trade off your 2/2.
Your magic shall not save.
So you don't have the risk of your redemption getting eaten by your 1/1 dying.
I like it.
That.
Yep.
You also have 4 minions, so if you are going to play around Mind Control Tech, you'd likely want to trade here. Also plays around coin into Carnivorous Cube to potentially give your opponent more of those, not necessarily something that is super effective. But now, you know, Faeli is in the position where, okay, well, he can use this flanking strike. It would end up getting the redemption triggered.
Yep, and I don't think Faeli's gotten confirmation yet on what secret that could be. It could be Auto Defense Matrix, it could be Noble Sacrifice.
I believe at this point it could actually be anything other than repentance.
Yes. Ah, very clever. Faeli did this to effectively reduce the health on the board for coin Deathstalker Rexar.
Yeah, this is important because of the Rexar specifically.
Yeah, and that's why he saved the coin. That was excellent recognition there, because he says if it's redemption, which is the best secret in his disposal, then you know what? It wouldn't have done anything to the Amani Berserker. And now Jing hits a relatively weak turn.
Let me think.
Definitely going face with that. And the question is, okay, what else do I do?
Right, and holding on to the second Spellbreaker is pretty crucial if your opponent is coming up on a Witchwood Grizzly turn. So that way you can keep pushing damage.
Wow, good Consecration.
Yeah.
Keep pushing damage, I like this. Consecration's a fairly weak card in the matchup in general, and in particular, given that there are no equalities in Jing's deck. So at best, that's going to do 2 to your opponent's stuff.
Well, this coin Rexar is going to be massive for Faeli to clear the board, gain a little bit of health, but it once again gives Jing the initiative to develop.
Though taking his time.
I wonder.
I think, yeah, we're going to see it. The eternal hunt has begun. And now, even more so, could just do 8 to you. One of the weird things about his curve right now, Jing has Mojo Master, which costs him a mana crystal and does not impact Faeli, because Faeli already has 5. Yeah. So, it may seem, oh, well, you can just play Mojo Master on curve. Playing Mojo Master on curve is inherently detrimental because you are giving your opponent the mana advantage for the rest of the game, just to get a 5/5.
I mean, the 5/5 is pretty nice to challenge the board.
It is, but it's a big cost. He's got Lich King. It will be multiple turns away from Lich King, additional turn away from Lich King.
And Lich King might be one of his ways to finish this game.
So this is actually a very tough decision for Jing here. I mean, I think that it's even reasonable to just play Ooze hero power.
It's 4 power versus 5, so it's not that much of a difference.
And not cutting yourself off from mana.
Right. And then I guess you could end up just going for
specifically, specifically the Lich King in hand makes that so much worse. He's going to go for it, though. It looks like he's decided, all right, 5/5 is worth it. And definitely we saw it took him the entire length of the turn. Tough call.
Yeah. It's just kind of like the Felguard, you know, like it's a 3-mana 3/5 taunt for Warlock that is pretty powerful for its stats, but the destroying of the mana crystal hurts a lot.
Yeah, it's a very, very big deal. And again, you know, the fact that the Lich King is already in hand makes it that much more difficult decision and that much more painful decision, because you know that card obviously can really be a major swing point in a game, and now Jing is that much further from it.
Right. So he has options to try to build a beast first to see if he wants to have a playable beast. He can tracking for other information, or he can play a couple of his cheaper minions. The tracking does allow him to potentially activate his Devil Sword. And Faeli, instead, just takes the initiative to develop as much as he can. So the double 3s makes a lot more sense, too, because it feels like Jing is not going to allow himself to be vulnerable to that Mind Control tech, as you see with his early game plays.
Well, we do see a Spike Ridge Steed drawn, which right now only serves to get in a little bit of extra damage, but does potentially represent you know, making it a lot tougher for Faeli to take down the Mojo Master. We do see that there's a Spellbreaker already waiting in the hand, and there are 2 copies of Spellbreaker in Faeli's deck, so committing 6 mana to effectively do 2 damage right now has to be a little bit of a question mark.
Well, it doesn't make sense.
I wonder.
Man, if it wasn't for that Spellbreaker in the Hunter deck, it'd just be, you know, the Spiker Steed insta-call and push for half his life. But this is definitely tricky if you're in Jing's spot. The punish is very real. At the same time, there's only 4 power on the board, so if you do end up Spike Ridge Steed and it does get silenced, your opponent would have to add extra change to it.
Your magic shall not save.
All right, well, just going to go ahead and spread his minions across, get rid of the Death Rattle on that egg. There's an opportunity with both of the silence effects gone from Jing for Faeli to get something down that may make him regret that.
Yeah, for one thing, he can tracking for the Witchwood Grizzly.
Right.
You could also build a beast. I mean, there are a handful of cheap taunt minions that can help him in this position, and also the more mana he has, the more likely he can play it immediately with things like Vicious Scalehide combination. Exploding Blowbat seems appetizing, although is it too slow in this spot?
Yeah, I mean, looking at the board, Jing has 8 power that you won't be able to answer given this the 3/3. So Exploding Blowbat, if it hits a boar, if you get a charge on it at 5 cost, would be insane here. You'd actually just clear the board.
Yeah.
The Owl doesn't do very much, and the Timberwolf doesn't seem like it does very much. So I think looking for the potential like high roll situation, as it were. All right, he does take the Wolf.
Yeah, the Wolf and the Valbrute Skitterer. Faeli gonna go for a tracking, finds the
Grizzly,
Witchwood Grizzly.
But he's already used his mana.
Yeah, and that's kind of one of those order scenarios that
he does find play dead though, and that does give him some additional bodies on the board.
Jing potentially is lethal here.
Well, if he can get lethal if he hits 3 to the face with Avenging Wrath, which is not likely.
Right.
That is the.
But what he could do is
Spike Ridge Steed one of these. Yeah, Spike Ridge Steed one of these. Send 10 to the face.
And then he only has to hit with
then you just
1.
then you just need a Wrath 1 to the face, and you actually end up winning the game the next turn.
I think I like that too, because your opponent still has to deal with the Spiker Steed minion, which forces a silence and doesn't give him many options in response. This is looking very bad for Faeli.
It is.
I wonder.
And, you know, even if that 1/1 survives and he creates out this reinforce.
Yeah, that's lethal.
That's lethal too.
Right, any damage to the face, period, is lethal. You have to stop all the minions and not die to Avenging Wrath.
Right.
This is, you know, Jing on the cusp of being up 2 games to 0, 1 damage off.
Yep.
And he's got that damage just in his hand.
Yeah, I mean, it's a very brutal punish for Faeli, like tracking second. And I don't blame him, too. You know, Build a Beast gives him a lot of options normally. And he's hitting some of his powerful cards, but he needs more than just that. I think he needs to build a Beast. He needs to pick up very cheap minions. Actually, I think there's only one combination that can really save him in this spot, and I think it's Vicious Scalehide and Wisp. Or not Wisp.
Penguin.
Penguin, sorry.
I was like, Wisp.
The Wisp equivalent. You knew what I meant. But in this spot, like, probably just a Hungry Crab or a Galaka Crawler and hope for something else.
Take a Hungry Crab and like turn one of those things into a Murloc.
Oh yeah, transmog your opponent's minion to be a little fishy. No, none of this. None of this is what Faeli wanted.
He's got the crab, but
I mean, he's just dead on the board.
Even without that Avenging Wrath, there's nothing Faeli can do, and Jing takes that 2-0 lead. You were saying it before, so far China has not dropped a game in this tournament, and Jing is not stopping that now.
Jing is up 2-0, 1 game away from yet another 3-0. Kibler, this is one of the fastest days of championships we've ever had.
I mean, there hasn't been a win in the column of the player who lost yet. It's ridiculous.
Yeah. And we'll see if that continues, as the last deck remaining for Jing with his Hunter band is Rogue. And that is a Tempo Rogue, which does have a handful of decent matchups across the board as well.
Yeah, the Tempo Rogue is one that we haven't seen a ton of, but their number of players did bring it to this tournament, and it has a lot of explosive potential. The raiding party for the card draw and damage draw, effectively, giving your Pirates and Shadow Blade, I believe, is the weapon of choice, which does great board control against aggressive decks and pushes for a lot of damage against control.
Yeah, all right, well, that's going to be game number 2. We'll find out if China can keep the momentum up and send Faeli to his first round loss. And Europe and China both were off to a fast start in their groups with 3-0 sweeps. However, now Jing is up 2-0, threatening for a 4th sweep in a row, Brian Kibler.
Yeah, we've seen a lot of zeros in the win column today for half the players, and Jing here hoping to finalize that with the full first half of the day going sweep, 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 sweep.
Yeah, and this is just big for China in general because they, unlike every other region, have 0 representatives in the World Championship outside their regional points leader, which is a guaranteed spot. And, China has almost become sort of defeatist in their own mentality as a fan base. They're always just like, well, we even send our players just going to lose anyways. It's just, that's kind of the level of morale it feels like it's happening. And, there's definitely some players that break through and give them hope. We talked about Megazir and Jason So in the past. Even just look back historically, Titter Celestial did very well. But, with some of these guys that are making comeback, Time Yao, Xiaoti, who's doing really well in all these tournaments. And now maybe Jing could join that conversation along with LFyueying.
Yeah, and Jing here, he has one more game in this match to push himself through against Faeli's Togwaggle Druid deck.
Right. This is a Tempo Rogue that features a lot of pressure and pirates. I mean, people call it Pirate Rogue, people call it Tempo Rogue. You can call it whatever you want. It just goes face a lot. I'm personally a big fan of Raiding Party because I think Shadow Blade is a pretty underrated weapon just for tempo and aggression purposes. And we'll see if Jing can get rolling here. The thing about Faeli's Togwaggle Mill Druid is that on paper it's his weakest deck in the entire best of 5. It's got the lowest win percentages across the board. So Faeli, not wasting any time. Maybe he's trying to complete the sweep prediction that we're all talking about.
There is always, when you are playing in a match like this, in a tournament like this, you can come and play like your strongest deck. If you're like, okay, I have to win 3 games in a row, I can open with my strongest deck, then my second strongest deck, and then my weakest deck in order to get the most time spent on stage. But like, if you have to win all those games anyway.
Right.
So if you decide, okay, well, what I value is, not exerting mental energy that's unnecessary. I can just take my toughest matchup first. If I lose that anyway, all right, I just go back and I get a little bit more sleep or a little bit more time to prepare for my next match.
Precisely. Jing has a lot of options going to turn 3 as well. He can set up a very powerful Edwin Van Cleef to set up a 6/6, and that curves perfectly into the Faldorai Strider. Or you can just simply stay on the course and play Henchcan Thug into Faldora Strider, and then save his coin for even bigger plays on the following turns.
Yeah, the Thug ends up being 4/4, which goes directly into a possible swipe from your opponent the next turn. So I think that maybe Jing will decide to fire off the Van Cleef here.
I mean, with the armor gain too, Spellstone is now a way to challenge it too. So I think I like the Van Cleef a little better. It's not like you're saving the coin for anything in particular right now either, right? Like the coin would just make a Van Cleef even more bonkers. But, you know, that also gives Faeli more time to draw Naturalize.
Right.
Also, coincidentally enough, with that Spellstone draw, Faeli now has a way to deal with the 6/6 Vanguard.
Right, he does. Yeah. So it ends up being a situation where none of the plays for Jing create a minion that there's no answer for Faeli, thanks to that Spellstone. But still figure out, okay, well, what are the possible removal spells he could have, unless he already had Spellstone in hand when he cast that Howl or drew it, as he actually did. Then my Van Cleef as a 6/6 will be unopposed by anything. Ooh, this is interesting. It looks like he's gonna play the deckhand rather than just playing a Flame Elemental, and this means that if there is a Spellstone, it's like, okay, well, at least I'm just getting a little bit of extra damage in here that you have to deal with.
Yep, I like it, because then the swipe is not enough to deal with it by itself.
Right.
So either way, he should stick a little bit more power onto the board. No need to attack if you want to attack, and redagger. That would be setting up for turn 5 with this HCT Thug. Spellstone, huge blessing here for Faeli. But Jing's not going to stop. You know, Valdori Strider or the HCT Thug, very good spot, opportunities here in this spot.
Does end up just getting swiped next turn, but does get at least damage in here. Gets the spiders into his deck.
Yeah.
The saps are among the worst draws for him, because there really aren't minions that they're great at dealing with here. There are a couple of Ironwood Golems, which are nice to have access to sap to answer. There's Naturalize, so yeah, lots of tools for Faeli with, especially with that early armor gain. He's still over 30.
Yeah, like he's just gonna swipe and then nourish for double Arcane Tyrant next turn.
Yeah, this is not looking like a game that will be Jing running him over once again, as Faeli has some great tools to answer all this early aggression.
Well, Jing can go back to the drawing board here. Has the ability to just play the Henge Clan Thug. Attack. Maybe consider redaggering.
I think that's what we'll see.
Yeah. I don't really think the Flame Elemental adds too much in this position. I don't think the 1 damage is really going to matter versus enabling a combo if you pick up Vile Spine, for example. Then again, you have 2 saps.
Right.
Faeli picks up the Oakid Summons, so that's going to be good too to keep his card draw flowing.
Speaking of card draw, going to go for cards rather than mana here.
Yeah, it makes sense given that he doesn't have Ultimate Infestation.
Right. And yeah, the pair of Arcane Tyrants does make this such a more powerful turn.
Yeah, although it gives something to sap finally.
It does. And these are, frankly, pretty nice sap targets, because they are kind of difficult for Faeli, at least with his current hand, to redeploy efficiently.
Yeah, and I think part of the problem too is he wants to also push damage and tempo. So does he utilize prep here?
I think there's a reasonable argument to just prep sap the second one, play your SI, push as much damage to face as possible.
I like that too.
Yeah, and that's exactly what Jing's going to do. Get those both in the hand, just get the damage rolling.
Oh, yeah.
You need this damage to start adding up, because you are just now getting Faeli down below 30 life. And there's still a Naturalize in hand, too.
Yeah, exactly. Although, the silver lining is that Jing will be able to recover.
Ooh, another Nourish.
Are you serious?
That means those Arcane Tyrants can come down for free again. He could even, if he wants, Naturalize. He could, how many cards are in his hand? He's 9, is that right? 1, 2, 3, 4. Yeah, so he could.
I mean,
he could Naturalize into Nourish into play both guys. Strong cards.
Or even just Oaken Summons for the second Ironwood Golem.
Right.
So he can Nourish for crystals. He could play the Arcane Tyrants, innervate the second Arcane Golem. There's only one Greedy Sprite in his deck. And that pulls out even more cards from his deck, so he can get closer to drawing more high impact cards like Spreading Plague or Ultimate Infestation. And he will ramp into Ultimate Infestation too, so the need for Innervate is actually significantly reduced. So that's one option. I actually don't mind the other option that you were talking about too, just like to kind of take it easier with Naturalize to minimize the guaranteed damage. Oh, interesting.
Okay, he's just going to go ahead and...
So he's saving the Innervate.
And Jing, though, one thing about this, compared to the line of play that I suggested as an option, he's not casting Naturalize against an opponent who has a small hand. And Naturalize, A, is part of his win condition with Togwaggle Swap and blow you up to some degree. Not that you necessarily need to do that from a burst damage perspective. It can just be a grind perspective. But also, just leaving your opponent low on resources. You know one of those cards is Flame Elemental. So your opponent has one card, which makes the Naturalize much less appealing.
Yeah, I'm trying to wonder like what Faeli is thinking here. And I anticipate that the reason why he really wants to do this is because he wants to utilize Snurge for the card. I think he doesn't feel very confident in his hand situation. Right.
Well, I was suggesting that you do Nourish for card draw.
Oh, immediately that turn.
Yeah.
Gotcha.
That lets you replay the Tyrants, but it doesn't give you a defensive position and forces you to, unless you use your Naturalize, and using your Naturalize gives your opponent who you know has a weak hand additional cards. So I think that's the sort of thought process for Faeli.
Well, Leroy has removal. Once again, crossing the 30 mark. Not really doing too much otherwise. Faeli doesn't have too much on the board right now, but if you just stabilize for one turn, it's going to be difficult for Jing to climb out of here.
Speaking of stabilizing, there's Spreading Plague, and that comes with it 2 Arcane Tyrants.
Yeah, so now he has Spreading Plague, Arcane Tyrants, and that coin for the second, not the coin, the Innervate, excuse me, for the second Ironwood
It's a coin these days. Innervate's a coin.
The coin equivalent for maximum board presence. It doesn't look that great, largely because of the fact that you still don't have a lot of clunky cards, but I still think it's your best immediate play. I would be surprised if Faeli chose not to innervate this out, so that way he can keep the innervate for more flexibility off of his draws or his off his nourish. But I mean, this just looks too good.
Right, you just end up getting so much in the way of your opponent's aggressive deck, which has very low resources. You literally know they have exactly Flame Elemental in hand. So by getting that additional taunt out, it's like, okay, well, you can't effectively deal with much of what I have going on here, and even put himself in the driver's seat as far as just being able to get this damage in.
Yeah, this looks like that. It looks like Faeli has finally turned the corner here, unless Jing is able to pick up high impact cards like Myra's and Stable Elements.
And we are seeing the difference between this Tempo Rogue and Miracle Rogue. If this were a Miracle Rogue type deck, it's like, okay, I'm looking to draw Auctioneer, Sprint, something like that.
Right.
And now Jing, he is much more focused, and this deck in general is much more focused on the early game aggression. It does have the reload of Raiding Party, and Jing has not been fortunate enough to pick up a Raiding Party to help reload his hand. But he doesn't have much time now. Now he's sort of at the point where Faeli has really taken over this game.
Yeah, and I don't know what Jing can really do outside of hope for that draw. In the meantime, Faeli, he has to he has to continue to put on this pressure, but at the same time, I think he also doesn't want to draw too deep into his deck because of the threat of these spiders that got shuffled in. I think he recognized that's one way he can fall really far behind if his opponent gets really fortunate.
Oh, yeah, I actually wasn't even thinking about that with it in terms of the cost of Naturalize effectively. It's even worse than giving your opponent additional resources. And yeah, Jing decides, all right, these 1-2s are not going to cut it, and we finally have a game on each side of the board in a match here at the Winter Championship as Faeli picks up a game to get closer to even at 2-1.
Yeah, combo breaker. Finally. Faeli strikes back, and the Mill Druid able to get a victory, but I want to say that the Tempo Rogue could have easily crushed that Druid if it wasn't for that early game Spellstone, for example, or just having the swipe as a follow-up. All of that just stifled and pressured enough for Druid to stabilize. So yes, Faeli won with 23 life and a big board, but it could have easily gone the other way.
Well, it wasn't even just the Spellstone. It was Spellstone plus 2 Ferocious Howls to enable the Spellstone. If it weren't for the pair of Howls, Faeli would not have been able to get that Spellstone double upgraded in time before he at least took a lot of damage from Edwin Van Cleef.
It's true. All right, well, now that we finally have a game go the opposite direction, once again, Faeli has turned to his Death Rattle Hunter or his Cube Warlock. Let me look at see how that actually looks. Tempo Rogue seems to be pretty good against most of these decks, but the best deck remaining here is the Death Rattle Hunter versus Tempo Rogue. It's closer to an even matchup.
Yeah, and a lot of that comes down to the fact that, despite being Tempo Rogue, which we have over the past few years associated with being a Keleseth deck, this is a sap deck. This is a deck that can get rid of a Voidlord. That's in the way? No, it's not anymore. And that really helps swing the matchups that are more taunt-based, which also gives him a great answer to with Grizzly, which can be a big problem for the Death Rattle Hunter deck as well. But it will be the Warlock deck that Faeli is choosing to play. He could just be that reverse order of I'm going to just play my toughest matchup, then my next toughest one, just try and conserve brain power.
It's true. I mean, the hardest part is already over, which is winning the Mill Druid versus the Rogue, and the Rogue was on the play, which had almost the perfect curve. So, well, actually, it was on the coin twice. Apologies, but it had the big plays early on with the Henchclan Thug, Faldora Strider, and Van Cleef.
Yeah, and I think the big thing, that game, as we mentioned, was just Faeli's ability to answer while gaining a bunch of armor with the double Howl into the Spellstone. Here, though, there is still obviously very good efficient removal. We saw Faeli have the Defiles and Doomsayers and Hellfires, but there's not quite as much individual spot removal to take out big minions in this matchup. So Jing will be... Ooh, there's Unstable Element. That was actually a big part of what happened last game against Faeli's slower deck, was that Jing just ran out of resources. And double Strider plus Unstable Element means that Jing has the possibility of not only reloading fully as far as his resources are concerned once he expends things, but getting a huge board full of spiders in the process.
Yeah, that is big. That is big. Wow. Getting the Firefly. Now the reason why that seems big, even though it's just a 1/2 minion, is that it gets the extra damage in, and more importantly, helps Jing fill out the curve to be able to get that damage source in.
One thing I do want to note, Faeli chose not to play his Kobold Librarian on turn 1. The reasoning for that is twofold. One, his opponent can just dagger it down relatively quickly, and it doesn't really do much to help him preserve the board. And two, he's looking to draw a Spellstone, so he can combine his Kobold Librarian with the Spellstone in order to just upgrade it. We see exactly what he draws.
Right. If he Kobold Librarian, he would have drawn that Acidic Swamp Ooze.
Right. So by doing it this way, holding on to it, he now is going to be able to get that upgraded to 5, which is very important against the pair of 4/4s that are in Jing's hand.
Exactly. Spellstone is one of the most important cards against mid-sized units that end up going into the board, especially against Rogue, which has 3 to 5 health minions very often.
And a lot of burst damage too. Both the ability to remove them and the ability to get your health back up. Faeli already down to 26 life here, so going to really be able to take advantage of both halves of the Spellstone once Strider comes down.
That attack is fairly interesting, because that kind of communicates to Faeli that he doesn't have the Henchclan Thug. And that also communicates to me that Jing somewhat intends to play the Flame Elemental instead of the coin Faldora Strider. And I think especially with this Doomsayer setup, that is also discouraging Jing from doing the same thing too. So the extra attack ends up paying off. That's like one of those really small things that people don't really account for very much, but if Jing ends up winning by exact damage, remember that he attacked on 2 very aggressively, when most people would probably want to hold because, I might draw the Henchclan Thug next turn.
Yeah, now, in particular, he's not going to develop any minions into this. He could sap, but that would be a little, a little over the top, I think.
That's very ambitious because of the Voidlord possibilities that come from this deck.
I mean, Faeli does have the second Doomsayer as well as a Swamp Ooze. He could even just, next turn, all right, well, I'm gonna Doomsayer you. Right. Even Doomsayer Swamp Ooze if you do kill the Doomsayer. And, probably not the best use of Swamp Ooze in a matchup when your opponent actually has real weapons. He has real weapons and Deadly Poison even.
Right,
so
right.
Probably not going to see that.
Yeah, Shadow Blade and Deadly Poison are 2 reasons to hold on to that ooze. I wouldn't even hate the Spirit Singer Umbra just to get some sort of semblance of tempo against your opponent here.
I could even see with that giant draw in particular, you can just tap and play Doomsayer.
Oh, yeah, you're right. You set up for the 5-mana giant, but then you're going into a person's Valspine Slayer turn.
It's true.
I guess that's still okay because they're not developing like big minions.
There's also only a single copy of Valspine in Jing's deck because he does have 2 saps.
Sure.
But sap is not a great way to deal with giant because it just comes down cheaper the next turn once you put it back in their hand.
I don't mind the Doomsayer play here set up, especially with that Mountain Giant, because you should be able to have a nice squeaky clean board. Assuming your opponent doesn't just dump a sap into this.
A lot of it is that you're just trying to buy time. You're just trying to get enough time for you to get to your big plays. I mean, from Jing's perspective, there's even an argument that you just want to play a Faldori Strider here. Just get the scooters into your deck. Yeah. You just start getting those into your deck so that you need to spend your mana, right? Because you have the Myro's Unstable Element in your hand. So are you going to spend multiple turns from now actually playing your Striders out? Obviously, it's not the best case scenario for your Strider here, but it does at least have a payoff down the line, in particular given the context of your hand.
Yeah, I mean, that's 8 mana that he has to spend to invest into it.
Right. And he just has so many other uses for his mana over the course of the next few turns that it feels like giving himself the opportunity to have like a lucky streak of spiders coming off of his deck is potentially powerful use of his 4-mana turn here. You're just losing 4 mana if you're not using it too. It's not like you are doing anything particularly good. Okay, he's just going to play the Shadow Blade and hit the face. He doesn't want to just get it oozed. I think this is also a totally reasonable play for the turn here. The big thing is he's using his mana. It's important that he uses his mana and doesn't just let Faeli essentially take extra turns with these Doomsayers.
Yeah, I think the fact that he has the sap already makes having the Faldori be played in stick is much more effective.
Yeah, that's definitely true.
So I think he feels like having 2 in the hand is worth 1 in the bush, so to speak. Like having that value now guaranteed versus the potential of 3 spiders later is not that appetizing, I'd say.
I think it's like they're in the web, not the bush. They're spiders, man. They're spiders.
2 in the hands worth 1 in the web. I don't know.
2 in the hands worth 6 in the web, but they're not in the web yet until you play them, and they're not in your hand. They're on the board.
Well said, Kibler, as always. So then, do we set up this Mountain Giant now that we've seen this opponent equip that weapon? It is daunting to say the least when you're like, okay, I am willing to go down to half my life total.
Yeah, it looks like he's going to go,
yeah,
okay, I want to get rid of the other half of this.
I don't mind his bulk at all. Stop that weapon damage.
Yeah.
Whew. I mean, the annoying thing, the good thing about shutting down that weapon too is reducing the cost of the Dread Corsair, so that way Jing's tempo plays are significantly reduced. Now that said, Jing has pretty much a very easy way to clean the board here with the Backstab Dagger and the Hench Clan Thug. That's the first thought that popped into my mind. Hard pressed to really find a better option that's as clean.
Yeah, getting the Thug out and get the Thug starting to grow is pretty valuable. Obviously, he could use his coin and get a Strider out at this point, but there's not that much more value to getting a Strider out than getting the Thug out that will start growing if your opponent doesn't deal with it immediately. Yes, you give yourself the chance to draw those spiders as well, but this way you can hold onto the coin, maybe have a more powerful combination of cards in a future turn.
Yeah.
But again, this isn't a miracle style rogue deck. It doesn't have an auctioneer to draw where that coin represents additional cards. There really isn't much of a top end in this deck at all. He's actually drawn much of his most many of his most powerful cards here.
I mean, he does have one of the best deals in the game in terms of drawing cards. Myro's Unstable Element to help get that, but there is a possibility he burns almost all of them.
Right. Well, that's frankly, when I was mentioning earlier, part of the argument of do you want to just play one of these Faldori Striders now because you want to use your resources. He ended up playing the weapon, which is obviously a play that did a couple of things. One, it put a card up his hand. Two, it induced Faeli to play his Ooze,
right?
Which is in itself threw him off of a potentially strong turn of playing a Giant, which has its own value.
Faeli taking the more defensive approach again, afraid of that.
Oh, Captain, my Captain.
Captain Greenskin allows you to coin out the Dread Corsair.
You could also play a Strider and coin out the Dread Corsair as well. And he does still have both raiding parties in his deck, which will get him a his remaining Shadow Blade. And an additional charge of your Shadow Blade is worth a lot more than a charge on an already expended dagger.
That is all true, and I like what you're saying. So if you coin out the Dread Corsair, you have a 4/4 and a 3/3. Next turn, you can dagger and redagger and play Captain Greenskin to get maximum amount of durability charges and damage. And then, you have the Faldora Strider #2 and Sap as a way to add to that damage. It looks pretty good if you line it up that way. So that way, you have reasonable sized minions coming out every turn. You're spending your mana pretty much efficiently, and then you have Myra's Unstable Element to refill your hand after you invested both Faldora Striders in it. And I think it's like you said, the earlier you invest, the likelier it is you're able to build a bigger board. But again, Jing delaying on it, and he says, you know what, I value the Pirates now.
Well, I think part of this, while it's the play, waiting on your other weapon may be more efficient. This is, okay, I'm just getting in damage now.
Right.
I am threatening that, all right, well, I have 8, 9, 10. There's things that I could draw that just end the game if my opponent doesn't have a response.
That's fair.
If he just picks up Leroy here and say Faeli did not have this this Ziliax he just drew.
Right. Yeah, that would have been game over. Very frightening position here for Faeli. He could answer it. It's just not very efficient. To Hellfire and Defile, for example.
But Jing has had these 2 Faldora Striders since his opening hand.
Right.
He's drawn clearly a bunch of cards since then, and just hasn't had the Spiders shuffled into his deck. So he's ended up not having an opportunity to really take advantage of those outside of setting up for that Unstable Element.
I wonder what Faeli even thinks too, because Jing kept that leftmost Faldora Striders at the beginning of the game.
Right.
And so if you're looking into that, you say, why did you keep a card that you just haven't played to this point, and you've been playing the right side of your hand for a while? I think Faeli is very scared. He's like, you know what? He's been holding some cards way too long. He's been playing the right side of his hand. I don't trust him. I don't blame him.
Well, another Sap, but Jing here doesn't have a great use of his mana this turn. He can play one of these Striders, attack with the weapon, and redagger. Not super exciting at this point in the game. 7 mana turn. Obviously, he's spending all his mana, but would love to be able to have more of a threat than this. Another Hellfire is the draw. We may just see Doomguard here from Faeli because this is a little bit too scary, I think. Despite this being a relatively weak play from Jing here, it does put him in a position where this does threaten lethal if he doesn't deal with it. If he has any additional kind of burst. Actually needs to be multiple bursts. He has to be Leroy or like double Eviscerate or Cold Blood, or not Cold Blood, Deadly Eviscerate. He could just play the Ziliax, but that's not particularly good on this board.
Yeah, the Ziliax could trade into the 1/2 and then set up an awkward situation for Jing to get through it. But SI7 agent could easily chew through the Ziliax, and then you're not really doing too much after that.
Or just backstab.
Yeah.
Yeah, like I'm saying, I think we're going to see Doomguard this turn, and
it's close because if Doomguard does survive, then you have the ability to Umbra and cube it.
Your Shadow Blade. And Jing would have loved to have had that last turn instead of the redagger and additional minion. Though the Shadow Blade's not bad because it allows you to kill the Doomguard and still push some damage to the face, play your other Strider, and then you have double Sap plus Unstable Element, which just gives you a lot of reload and the ability to push through defensive minions from Faeli.
Yeah, I don't even mind sapping one of these now. But, because the Doomguard from the hand isn't really that threatening, I guess. But the Shadow Blade does set up for a better kill in the following turn, if you're able to draw any damage. The Faeli does have defensive tools in this spot. He has the Ziliax. He has the Hellfire and Ziliax in this spot. Goes back up to 8, clears everything.
Yeah, he is able to able to clear this off, but Jing can have a pretty nice follow-up himself.
Yeah.
Though it does leave him in a position, with the unstable element that, well, if you don't have what you need to end the game, then you're not going to end it.
I mean, the good news is that a lot of Jing's deck is geared towards winning.
Well, and one other crucial thing too, this is the second Hellfire from Faeli. So he does not have a Lord Godfrey in his deck. This the spiders that very likely come off of this unstable element will stick. There's no way for Faeli to deal with them. Deckhand is super efficient here too to get into play prior to the unstable element as well. He could even sap.
Yeah, I was thinking, do you want to dump your hand even more for an extra card?
Well, the thing is, he has the 2 saps, and if he does, say he plays Deckhand and he plays Unstable Element, and plays the sap, he still has the other sap left over if there's a Void Lord that comes down.
Right.
So that gives him that many more, overall resources because he draws an extra card, and extra shots at potentially hitting the spiders, which is also quite relevant.
Whew, I can see it go either way, because if you don't close out the game next turn, then you're going to want that second sap.
You will. Yeah, he's going to sap it. Oh, but he's not playing the Deckhand.
Interesting.
Okay. Well, a lot of animations that are going to happen here.
Right.
Raiding Party is a dead card. Preparation's almost a dead card. Oh, this just... never mind. Preparation's not a dead card. He found Eviscerate.
Oh my gosh.
And that's going to do it. So yeah, he finds the Eviscerate to go with it. And yeah, just closes out the game entirely. A little bit of extra damage there from the Deadly Poison as well. And yeah, Jing is able to take the series 3-1, the first win for the losing player of the series we've seen so far today, but the second win for China, who are having an excellent event so far.
Yep, really well done by Jing, recognizing that he wanted to go for his outs right there and right now. So, I was able to be very impressed by how China has been able to utilize and navigate their aggressive lineups. Got to talk about that Zoo Warlock too. It's just really interesting for him to bring such a low curve, grim rally Zoo Warlock to be very effective. And I mean, if this is a sign of things to come, this could be what we talked about in the pre-show. It could be China's weekend. Yeah, and it could be the weekend where we just see a lot of quick matches. We've seen these aggressive lineups do incredibly well so far, and Bunny Hopper still remains later today with yet another one. That's right.